My great kingdom of Italy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Contact, Part 2. Peng Gang originates from the Capuas Mountains in the center of the island, with a total length of 1,143 kilometers. After the river enters Pontianak, there are plains and lakes along the coast. It is a piece of excellent fertile soil. In addition, in the nearby mountainous areas, small rivers wash out. Gold has made this place the first choice for Chinese immigrants through the reclamation and cultivation of the Chinese. The coast of the Peng Gang River has become a land of plenty. The fertile Peng Gang River basin immediately attracted the peeps of the Dutch. How could the Dutch give the fruits of so much hard work to the Dutch? If you take it away, you can only fight to the end. If you don't say anything point at present, Lang Fang has mobilized the armed forces to the Peng Gang area in Pontianak, intending to use Peng Gang to defend the river. Therefore, during this period of time, Liu Nguyen had not slept at all. He had to work hard every day to collect supplies, purchase weapons and ammunition, boost morale, and other matters. It can be said that he was busy without touching the ground. No. In a tributary of Peng Gang River, someone discovered the movement of Dutch people, and Liu Nguyen immediately arranged for someone to go check it out. Lu asked EC to take a team of people to Gannon to see if there are any Dutch people. The name Luer in Liu Nguyen's mouth is Liang Luai, and he is now his right-hand man. Don't worry, chief. I'll let him, Li Si, take the people there. After speaking, Liang Luai strode out, and soon he heard his loud and angry voice. Li Si, where did you die? Come out quickly, Liu. Nguyen smiled, shook his head, and continued to deal with other things, but as if it was destined, just when he picked up a document and was about to read it, he only heard a thumping sound coming upstairs. It was not good for the bamboo building to make too much noise. Before Liu Nguyen could ask questions, the bamboo door was pushed open, and he saw it was Liu Yibo, one of Lan Fang's leaders. Due to the special nature of Lan Fang's system, it was composed of various companies, similar to Jianghu societies, and their leaders were respectfully called leaders. Before he could speak, the Luo leader spoke. Chief, your cousin Luo Yibo is here. He also brought a European with him, and said he must see you. My cousin came and brought a European with him to see him. Liu Nguyen, who was a little confused by Luo Yibo's words, said, tell me, what's going on? Facing the confused Liu Nguyen, Luo Yibo then told the story of his meeting with his cousin. It turned out that Luo Yibo was patrolling the Peng Gang River with his people, and happened to meet Liu Jingsheng, who came by boat, and claimed to be Liu Nguyen's cousin. What was even more surprising was that there was a foreigner beside him. However, after some questioning, Luo Yibo discovered that this was really the chief's cousin, so he immediately asked his people to bring these two people over, while he quickly set up a boat and came to report first. After hearing leader Luo's report, Liu Nguyen pondered for a while. His cousin came all the way from his hometown and brought a European with him. He immediately realized something and spoke quickly. When they dock, welcome them in immediately. Forget it, I'll pick them up myself. Not long after, the boat carrying cousin Luo Yibo docked. Liu Nguyen, who had been waiting here for a long time, immediately stepped forward and grabbed his cousin, who was just getting off the boat. Brother Jingsheng, long time no see. My lord, you have lost weight. After briefly greeting his cousin, Liu Jingsheng, who was not good at words, immediately pulled the accompanying foreigner over. This is Major Kara from Italy, some kind of embassy attaché. It turned out that he was an Italian. After hearing his cousin's words, Liu Nguyen, who was slightly disappointed, still greeted him with a cheerful face. Hello, Major Keller, I'm glad to have you here. Hello, Mr. Liu. I took the liberty of asking your cousin to help me this time, mainly because I want to appreciate the beautiful scenery of Lan Fang. Major Keller's Chinese was not bad. Although he was still a bit tongue-tied, he could at least understand everything he said. However, what he said almost made Liu Nguyen laugh. Even a 3-year-old child would not believe that Lanfang, a remote area, is considered beautiful. That's no problem. Since the major wants to see the beautiful scenery, I will let someone familiar with you take you for a tour. But after all, you are a guest from afar, and I like to make friends the most. Can you honor me as a landlord? I will give you a tour. Very happy to. The two had a brief conversation and immediately decided that a private conversation would follow. At this time, Liu Nguyen spoke to a person next to him. It's not easy for my cousin to come here with all the effort so he can entertain me well. The person next to him was naturally very discerning and immediately complimented Liu Jingsheng with a smile on his face. Brother Liu must be exhausted from the long journey. I'll take you to have a rest and ask the kitchen to prepare some game for brother Liu to try. After Liu Jingsheng was taken away, Liu Nguyen waved and gave guidance. Mr. Major, please come this way. After briefly taking Major Curler around twice, Liu Nguyen immediately took him to the bamboo house where he lived. After giving instructions to the guards on the way, the two came to the main room point after the guest of honor was seated and the servants served coffee. Liu Nguyen spoke. I'm afraid Major Keller didn't come here just to see the scenery. I think you are more interested in the weapons and warehouses we carry. Yes, Your Excellency is right, Major. Kara didn't try to hide it at all and admitted it directly. Hearing Major Curler's direct admission, Liu Nguyen stood up immediately. He said aggressively, then tell me your purpose and don't lie to me with words that can't even coax a 3-year-old child. I want to see if you have the strength to resist the Dutch. Bang. Liu Nguyen slapped the revolver he carried on the table and said with a bad expression, so now you think we have the strength to stop the Dutch? Faced with Liu Nguyen's threat, Major Keller ignored it and only saw him shaking his head and replying, I'll be honest, when I'm angry, your equipment is too poor and many of you don't even have a rifle. It's impossible to stop the Dutch unless you have help from outsiders. Major Kara used the word outsider very seriously. He believed that Chief Liu could understand what he said. Sure enough, Liu Nguyen lost his momentum immediately, but the tiger would never fall, so he retorted directly. Can it be that with help from Italy, you can make the Dutch retreat? Your Excellency is right. We in Italy alone can make the Dutch retreat. Not only can we make them retreat, but we can also restore Lanfang to its largest territory. Ha. Ha ha ha. Faced with Major Curler's words, Liu Nguyen laughed. What? Do you have in Nanyang? You have no soldiers and no ships. Why should you let the Dutch listen to you? Facing the ridicule, Major Curler looked at Liu Nguyen in front of him and spoke word by word. Who said we have no soldiers or ships? It's just that you don't know. You don't have to make a draft to brag. If you Italians had soldiers and ships, I would have gotten the news a long time ago. Don't think that we in Lanfang are not well informed in Nanyang. As long as there is any trouble, we will know it immediately. It's really ignorant. If our country doesn't show its strength in Nanyang, we think we have nothing to do. Let me tell you, our fleet is on the way. If you want to get help, you should speak up early. Otherwise when we leave, then you just face the Dutch yourself. As soon as Major Keller finished speaking, he stood up and made a pre-movement gesture. Seeing that the Italian was about to leave, Liu Nguyen quickly stepped forward to stabilize him. Please wait a moment, Your Excellency Major. I assume your country's help will not be free. Certainly. So, what are the conditions? This is very simple. As long as Lanfang declares independence and asks for help from our country will naturally help you. It will also expand your territory several times. What's the price? You announced your intention to join Italy and become our overseas province in Nanyang. Liu Nguyen understood now that there was a wolf in front of him and a tiger in the back, all trying to eat Lanfang. After saying this, Major Curler took out a document and handed it to Liu Nguyen. This is our country's condition. At least compared to the Dutch, our country has no intention of using you and then abandoning you. Please consider it. After informing Liu Nguyen of such a straightforward threat, Major Kara stood up and left. He believed that Chief Liu from Lanfang would read the documents he gave him. After seeing Major Keller walking away, Liang Guan couldn't help but open the document. Please vote for recommendations. Today there are 2 chapters. Robbery. Recommend votes. Chapter 102 Contact. Part 2. In the Lanfang camp on the bank of Kunjiang River, leaders from all walks of life gathered together today because the Commander-in-Chief Liu Nguyen had important matters to discuss with everyone. In the largest bamboo building in the camp, heads of people stood tall. Leaders from Sanfa, Xinkuang, Pontianak, Dongwan Lu, Gaoping and others came over. The Lanfang soldiers and civilians guarding this place felt that this meeting was extraordinary. Isn't this Chief Zheng Zhengxin? The 3rd batch he is in is not close to here. Chief Zheng Zhengxin, who is being talked about by the military and civilians, is a fat man in his 40s with a kind face. Don't be fooled by his appearance. Smiling Tiger is his nickname. I saw this smiling tiger walking slowly into the venue, choosing a seat to the side, and sitting down. Within 2 minutes, another tall, thin middle-aged man with a gloomy aura walked over. Leader Yi Tingfen from Gaoping is also here. The voice of the person speaking this time was much lower. This person was also famous in Lanfang, but his reputation was obviously somewhat negative, because he grew opium in Gaoping and sold a lot of it to his own people. He was an opium dealer, but he had a lot of people eating from his hands. He could summon 200 to 300 people at any time, so he was considered a tyrant in Gaoping. Subsequently, leaders such as Jiuo Yoi, Yu Kang, Huang Fuan, Chen Hena, Luo Sating, Lin Sotang and other people from Xinkuang, Pontianak, Dongwan Lu and other places arrived one after another. These leaders all come from various places, and they are all in one place. It is rare to get together like this, so I took advantage of this opportunity and naturally started to move around. Chief Luo, nice to meet you. Chief Chen, how are you lately? It's not very good. It's hard to do business. Who says it's not the case? Even though I have a lot of people, everyone is counting on me for food. Now one of them is ahead of the 2, and they are almost worried to death. As the leaders talked, the venue was noisy for a while, and it smelled like a vegetable market. Of course, this situation continued until a loud shout was heard. Always there, as Lanfang President Liu Nguyen appeared with Liang Luai and Luo Yibo. The venue immediately fell silent. The Liu family has been the chief of Lanfang for decades, and their prestige is no joke. Although Liu Nguyen has only been the chief for more than a year, he can still dominate the audience with the strength accumulated by the Liu family in Lanfang for many years. One more thing, Liu Nguyen's father was Liu Shaoxan, who accepted the appointment of Capitan in the Netherlands and made Lanfang a subsidiary republic of the Netherlands. However, compared with his father's compromise, Liu Nguyen's attitude towards the Dutch was different, and his attitude towards the Dutch was very tough. Of course, this may have something to do with the Netherlands' opinions on Lanfang. Previously, the Dutch had acquiesced that Lanfang was a subordinate republic, but now they plan to turn it into a direct jurisdiction. This seriously threatened the interests of the Liu family. As the head of the family, and also the chief executive, Liu Nguyen would certainly not allow such a thing to happen. Of course, the more important thing is that the Dutch do not want to leave benefits to the leaders of Lanfang at all. They just want to wipe them all out. After Liu Nguyen sat at the head of the delegation, he spoke. Let's start. As he finished speaking, Luo Yibo stood up. Chiefs, the commander-in-chief has summoned everyone this time to discuss important matters. Everyone knows that the Dutch are pressing down on the border now, and we have to resist. However, relying on our strength alone, the chance of winning against the Dutch is low, so the commander-in-chief we have been trying to introduce another force to help us resist the Dutch invasion. Here is good news for everyone. At present, we have found a force willing to help us. After speaking here, Luo Yibo paused and gave the answer. The Italians. They reached out, and they were willing to protect us. Wait a minute. You said the Italians will provide us with protection. A voice suddenly appeared in the venue and interrupted Luo Yibo's words. A man wearing black clothes was seen, with his hands folded on his chest, as if waiting for an answer. Everyone knows this man. He is leader Jiuo Yoi from Xikaoyang. This man is not an ordinary person. He has a high prestige in Peng Gang. He can summon 5 to 600 men with just one order facing Guo's words. Luo Yibo glanced at Liu Nguyen and spoke immediately after receiving the instructions. Yes, you heard it right. What I said is that Italy provides all-round protection for Lanfang, not only externally, but also internally. Luo Yibo's words were like a huge stone falling into a lake and immediately causing a storm. When we were the Dutch, we could still take care of ourselves, but if it were the Italians, they would take care of everything. Isn't this the same condition as the Dutch? Is this condition acceptable? Yes. If this is the case, why are we fighting? We might as well let the Dutch make the decision. At least everyone is familiar with it. Screw you Huang Dongwa, don't think that labor and management don't know about your flirtation with the Dutch. I tell you that, as long as I, Chen Hena, live one day, the Dutch will never be allowed to appear in Lanfang. Chen Ergao, you must have taken the wrong medicine. I told you that I could not collude with the Dutch to betray Lanfang. Besides, you heard others say that your family was killed by the Dutch, and you did not see it yourself. Maid, labor and management will deal with you, the traitor, first. Chen Ergao, you. Ouch. The venue was now in chaos. Some people came forward to try to pull Huang Fuan, Chen He and Ertu away, while others tried to persuade them from the side. It was much more lively than a vegetable market. Snapped. A loud bang on the table brought everything to an abrupt end, and the chief, Liu Nguyen, had an angry look on his face. What do you think this is? Do you want me to give you 2 knives to decide whether you want to live or die? After roaring at all the leaders in the venue, Liu Nguyen turned to his right-hand man and said, Luo, please maintain order at the venue. If anyone talks nonsense again, throw them out directly. Yes, chief. Uncle Yi, please continue talking, focusing on the conditions of Italians. Luo Yibo, who spoke again, now talked about the conditions offered by Italy. We, Lanfang, were merged into the Kingdom of Italy and became an overseas province of Italy in the east. Therefore, our citizens automatically obtained the national status of the overseas provinces of Italy. As a condition of the merger, Lanfang Republic will present to the Kingdom of Italy, Xianfu population register, review case files, etc. The Italian side will train our current Lanfang officials and then arrange positions according to their abilities. In addition, in terms of military and police, the Kingdom of Italy will also give priority to people with this level of expertise in our country. In addition, Luo Yibo always talked about a lot of terms, but most of them were about the benefits that Lanfang would get after merging into the Kingdom of Italy. His voice was the only voice left in the venue, and every leader would listen attentively, fearing that they would miss something. What point, however, after hearing that the taxes of Lanfang people would be 20% higher than that of Italians in the future, there was a commotion in the venue, but it subsided under Liu Nguyen's watch point. However, in general, the political rights of the Chinese in Lanfang and the Italians will be much different in the future. In addition, in order to show its goodwill, Italy has also given many positions to appease them. Only the taxes for the Chinese are higher. It can be said that this condition is the most friendly to the Chinese in any region in Southeast Asia. However, as the saying goes, people's hearts are not as good as snakes swallowing elephants. Sure enough, after Luo Yibo finished speaking, the focus of the scene was on taxation. Why, we Chinese have higher taxes, to levels higher than Italians. This is unfair. Yi Tingfen from Gaoping was the first to speak. He had an indignant look on his face and seemed to have strong opinions on this issue point. Since someone has come forward, it is time to take action on him. Mr. Liu, who is afraid of long nights and many dreams, is not a good man or woman. Why? What does Leader Yi have to say? Commander, I don't have any high opinions. It's mainly because I feel unsatisfied. Why should the Italians have to pay 2 less tiers, and we have to pay 2 more tiers? Also, what does that training mean? If it doesn't suit the will of the compatriots, then that's not the case. Keep training. If Yi Tingfen was just giving advice at the beginning, then he had some other intentions later on. Faced with Yi Tingfen's provocative words, Liu Nguyen smiled and said unusually kindly, so based on what Leader Yi wants, how should we talk about it? I think we should at least find the big guys to do the summing up. After all this has been negotiated, and then call everyone together, isn't this a waste of everyone's time? This was already considered a serious provocation. I don't know what medicine leader Yi took wrongly, but he was not allowed to be arrogant now. Liu Nguyen looked at him with contempt and said casually, "You deserve it." These 4 fluttering words made Yi Tingfen feel his face burning. He felt that he had lost face and pointed with his hand. "Liu, what did you say before?" Yi Tingfen could continue to speak. Liang Luai, who had already gotten the hint, led the 2 of them and pushed him to the ground. Faced with the unfair look on his face, Liu Nguyen walked in front of him. "Don't think that you colluded with the Dutch. I don't know. I didn't move you before for the sake of the overall situation. Now that you've jumped out on your own, don't be surprised." After speaking, Liu Nguyen turned to Luo Yibo and asked, "How should I be punished for colluding with outsiders and plotting evil intentions?" Put out both eyes. 3 cuts and 6 holes. These 3 knives and 6 holes are not stabbed 3 times on the limbs, but on the waist, chest and other torso areas. It can be said that the person who is stabbed will definitely die. After hearing what Luo Yibo said, Liu Nguyen said to Liang Luai, who was holding down Yi Tingfen, "Then do this." Upon hearing that Liu Nguyen was going to kill him, Yi Tingfen was also a bachelor and cursed loudly. "Liu Nguyen, you must die a happy death. I will wait for you below." After taking the troublemaker Yi Tingfen away, Liu Nguyen spoke to the others. "Now that the traitor Yi Tingfen has been dealt with, let's continue the meeting. If you have any opinions, please raise them. I will listen to everyone's opinions. Who can tell clearly what happened just now? At this time, we can still have opinions on the matter." "I have no opinion." As the first person spoke, the rest fell into place. "I don't have any objection either." "Me too." Seeing that no one had any objections, Liu Nguyen continued. "Since everyone has no objection, it has been decided. However, considering that it is rare for everyone to get together, everyone will stay a few more days to let me show my friendship as a landlord." Seeing everyone's confused looks, Liu Nguyen explained, "In order to prevent the news of our merger with Italy from leaking out, I have to aggrieve everyone for a few days." When they heard that they were not under house arrest, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. Chief Liu was also relieved. "You must know that Italy has also given a benefit, that is, Lan Fang can be appointed as the deputy governor in the future. Although this position does not have too much real power, it is still tempting to Liu Nguyen. Of course, if he wants to get this position, he still needs to do something. In order to avoid being disturbed by other people, he will first settle these people here. Please vote for recommendations. Please collect. The collection is too small." Chapter 103 Batavia under the muzzle. Part 1. Batavia is getting hotter in May. In fact, this place is very hot 365 days a year, but in summer the heat becomes even more uncomfortable. Although James Luton has been in Batavia for almost 2 years, he still has not gotten used to the climate here. The hot weather prevented the governor from sleeping well at all last night. When he got up with dark circles under his eyes this morning, he couldn't help but complain. "Damn it, this weather. I really want to leave here and go back to the comfort of Amsterdam." Of course, this complaint is just a complaint. It is so refreshing to be the governor in Batavia. Within 2 years of coming here, James Luton has not only paid off the loan he took to fight for this governorship, but also has more than 1 million in savings. It is expected that by the time his leaving savings should amount to N5 million. With such huge benefits, each governor can only serve for 3 years, because too many people are eyeing this position. Of course, this is the result under normal circumstances. If there is any unexpected surprise, then Governor Luton's wealth will be unlimited. And currently he is working on it. It was a God-given opportunity. The King people were at war with France, which gave the Netherlands a good opportunity to take action against Lan Fang. Although the 2 countries had ended the war, it seemed that the king had no time to take care of the situation in Lan Fang. Perhaps we should send an urging letter to Colonel Pate, who is leading the team, and ask him to take down this damn Lan Fang as soon as possible. These Chinese are really much more useful than the natives. They are hardworking and able to accumulate wealth. They are harvested every time, and they are simply perfect lambs. Maybe I can harvest something. Before leaving office. Governor Luton was thinking about good things when he was interrupted accidentally. Your Excellency the Governor. Your Excellency the Governor. I'm here. Seeing the panting servant running away, Luton said dissatisfiedly. Don't I, the Governor, have any private time? Of course, Your Majesty the Governor. But, what? But, there's an emergency. What's the situation? A fleet under the Italian flag has arrived outside the port. They request to enter the port for supplies. Major General J from the City Defense Command is asking for your opinion. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Abandoning the aggrieved servant, Governor Luton hurried downstairs. What's the situation now, Governor? Luton, who rushed to the port, asked Major General J, who was ahead of him, about the situation. Your Majesty the Governor, I just sent someone to inquire. This is the Italian fleet visiting the King dynasty. They want to rest in the port and replenish supplies. Facing Major General J's answer, Luton was very confused. How did they come to us? Didn't they go to Malacca? I won't ask about this, but my personal suggestion is to let the Italian fleet enter the port. After all, it is just for supplies and rest. Of course, he did not say anything about the potential. It was not a wise choice for Dutch Indonesia to refuse a large fleet to enter the port. Besides, the strength of this fleet is amazing. It is much stronger than the British and French fleets in Southeast Asia. The strength of the Dutch fleet in Southeast Asia is not worth mentioning. The largest is only a small ironclad ship of more than 4,000 tons, which is completely powerless. After hearing the words of the city defense commander, Governor Luton thought about it and then spoke. In this case, let it enter the port. However, considering the large number of Italian fleets, Governor Luton said to his attendants, send a message to Director Bock and ask him to take care of the security in the city. I don't want to hear any bad news during this time. After giving orders to his entourage, Governor Luton spoke to Major General J beside him. Then let's go and greet the visiting Italians. Following the order of Governor Luton, the port was opened to the Italian fleet. The Italian fleets entering the port one after another filled the port to the brim, especially the 3 giant steel ships with over 10,000 tons, which made people's hearts beat. At this time, Governor Luton felt a sense of regret in his heart. He regretted letting the Italian fleet enter the port point, but it was too late to regret now, so he could only greet the fleet commander and his party with a smile on his face. Hello, Governor Luton. Thank you for opening the port to us. As the commander of the fleet, Vice Admiral Zillion stepped forward and thanked Governor Luton before he could speak. Although he was preempted by Lieutenant General Syrian, Governor Luton was no ordinary person when he arrived and immediately took over the words. You're welcome. We should help each other. This is the etiquette we should have as a European country. It was always so strange to say this from Governor Luton, because as long as everyone has stayed in Southeast Asia, the Dutch are very protective of their colony. Except for their own ships and chartered ships, there are basically very few ships that can dock at the Batavia port. The Italian fleet can be docked because, on the one hand, the two countries have no interest in each other, and on the other hand, the Italian fleet is too powerful and Governor Luton does not want to anger the other party. After a brief introduction, Governor Luton spoke. Since I can meet you all in Batavia, I would like to invite you to the welcome dinner as a courtesy to the landlord. Faced with Governor Luton's kind invitation, Lieutenant General Hillian and others would certainly not refuse. Then, Your Excellency, Governor Leo, facing Lieutenant General Hillian's thanks, Governor Luton took the opportunity to express his greatest concern. Your Majesty, Lieutenant General, could you tell your Navy officers and soldiers that Batavia is not a big city? Can your fleet officers and soldiers only stay in the port area? Yes, this is the issue that Governor Luton is most concerned about. Because in this era, although naval officers and soldiers were disciplined when they came ashore, fights often occurred. If the Italian officers and soldiers made trouble, whether they would be arrested or not would be a difficult problem for Governor Luton. Therefore, it is better to restrict it to the port area, which can reduce a lot of unnecessary trouble. Faced with Governor Luton's request, Lieutenant General Hillian nodded. No problem. I will order the young men to only operate in the port area, and I will also send military police to restrain them. I hope this will not cause any trouble for you, Governor. Luton was very happy to face the reasonable Lieutenant General Hillian. Your Excellency's understanding is truly admirable. After the final trouble was resolved, Governor Luton personally invited Lieutenant General Hillian to visit his governor's mansion point in the evening of that day. The governor's palace was brightly lit, and a dinner party was held grandly for Lieutenant General Hillian and others, and a group of Italian officers were drinking with the Batavia dignitaries. Looking like a happy scene, Governor Luton personally accompanied him and introduced the local leading figures to Lieutenant General Hillian. This is Mr. Korff, an executive of the East India Company. The Dutch East India Company was famous, and Lieutenant General Hillian stepped forward to hold Korff's hand. Hello, Mr. Korff. Hello, Lieutenant General Syrian. This is Mr. Joe Gorman, whose family has been running the spice business. Being able to continue running the spice business shows the energy of Mr. Gorman's family, and Lieutenant General Hillian also did not neglect it. Hello, Mr. Gorman. Hello, Lieutenant General Syrian. Later, Governor Luton introduced the local dignitaries to Lieutenant General Hillian one after another. The Lieutenant General all greeted Yai, which was considered a preliminary acquaintance point. While Vice Admiral Hillian was attending the dinner, an Italian Navy liaison ship entered Batavia port through Dutch inquiries. A young officer jumped ashore without waiting for the boat to stabilize point. The lively welcome dinner always comes to an end, and Lieutenant General Hillian dragged his tired body and prepared to take a rest point. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. What's the matter? Don't you know I need to take a rest? The adjutant's voice came from outside the door. It's me, Lieutenant General. We just received bad news. Upon hearing what the adjutant said, Lieutenant General Hillian didn't even have time to put on his clothes, so he opened the door with his upper body naked. What news? Chapter 104 Batavia Under the Muzzle, Part 2. A night of drunkenness gave Governor Luton a headache, so he planned to rest for a while point. But some people don't want him to rest at all. Your Majesty Governor, wake up quickly. Your Majesty Governor, wake up. Governor Luton, who was awakened, suppressed his anger at being awakened and raised his head to ask about the servant who woke him up. Why are you so panicked? Haven't I handed you over? He didn't wait for the servant's answer, only to see the city defense commander Major General J appearing in front of him. It's just that the general is not much better than the servant, with the same frightened expression on his face. Your Majesty the Governor, I asked them to shake you awake. What happened? The confused Governor Luton was shocked by their expressions. If you think about it carefully, today is not April Fool's Day either. I can't explain this clearly. How about I take you to see it? The two of them rushed all the way to the highest point in Batavia, St. Louis Church located in Tanjung Priok. Standing high in the church, Governor Luton also looked horrified. What's going on with these Italians? What do they want? The scene that emerged before his eyes was that there were only 3 Italian warships left in the port, all of which were 10,000-ton ironclads, and they were already underway. Other warships are already wandering off the coast of Batavia, intercepting any ship trying to leave. More importantly, these Italian warships have taken off their gun jackets, and their muzzles are all aimed at various locations in Batavia, especially the to the fort on the side, is the focus of attention point. How could this situation not frighten Governor Luton? He knew that the Batavia fort was just a decoration, and the cannons on it were probably about the same age as him. Now, hurry up and contact Italy. What is going on now? Faced with this situation, Luton, as the governor, first needs to understand why. As for resisting the threat of Italy, don't be ridiculous. Pulling up all the navies of the Netherlands will not be enough for this fleet to fight. Others, needless to say, the 3 10,000-ton ironclad ships were simply impossible for them to defeat. Point before the Dutch could send out a ship to inquire about the intentions of the Italian fleet, the sharp-eyed Major General J pointed to the sea and spoke. Governor, look, Italy has sent a traffic boat over. Quickly, send someone to respond. Remember not to shoot at this time. Governor Luton wanted to know the reason most, because it was very important. At the same time, in the second half of his words, it can be seen that he now has no confidence in his heart and does not dare to confront Italy at all. In fact, without him opening his mouth, the Dutch army did not dare to take action against the Italians, who were about to land, because this was completely seeking death. As a soldier, he could see the gap between the two at a glance, and taking action would mean he was sorry for his own life. So after a while, a young and energetic Italian officer was brought to Governor Luton. Major, why is this? Is there any misunderstanding? Although he was facing a major, Governor Luton still showed a low profile, and it might be a misunderstanding when he spoke. I'm sorry, Mr. Governor, this is not a misunderstanding at all. The Italian officer's words immediately dashed Governor Luton's expectations, and he then revealed the reason. A reasonable explanation must be given for the killing of 2 Chinese missionaries by your army in the upper reaches of the Kun River, otherwise our 2 countries will be in a state of war. What? Luton was incredulous at the reason given by Italy, because it was so speechless. Although the reasons given by Italy were somewhat incredible, Governor Luton did not want to accept it just like that. He also wanted to fight for it. We can tell you what this is, because we don't know about it at all. At the repeated request of Governor Luton, the Italian officer informed the specific situation. It turns out that in a place called Bixi in the upper reaches of Peng Gang River, there were 2 Italian priests who traveled thousands of miles to preach. They worked tirelessly to spread the grace of God here. However, due to the war between the Netherlands and Lanfang, this small village was attacked by the Dutch army. During the looting, 2 missionaries fell under the guns of the Dutch. In order to protect the Holy Church, the news was spread everywhere by the people, who fled the village. It happened that an Italian reporter came to Peng Gang to report on the war between Lanfang and the Netherlands, and then the reporter sent the matter back to China. The country was extremely angry at the Dutch army's killing of 2 Italian missionaries, and demanded an immediate explanation from the Dutch authorities. At the same time, the Italian fleet arriving in Batavia naturally also needed to respond. After listening to the Italian officer's experience of this incident, Luton felt that there was something fishy about this incident. The news broke out just as the Italian fleet arrived. What a coincidence. Such a coincidence reminded him of the various reasons why the Dutch went to war against the natives. However, although he felt something was fishy, there is a saying that is good: the situation is stronger than the person. In this current situation, it is really inappropriate to talk about this matter with the Italians. We can only continue to listen to Italy's conditions. I wonder what your country's requirements are for this. We demand 2 things. The first is that the murderers of the 2 priests be handed over to us in Italy for trial, and that the cost of damaging the church be compensated. Hearing Italy's request, Governor Luton breathed a sigh of relief. This is a simple scumbag who can't see the situation clearly. If the Italians don't deal with it, he will deal with it. Keeping him will only harm himself. They even dared to kill priests from Europe. They were simply sinners of God. As for what to do, if you can't find it, this is simple. It must be done by the indigenous people. Only such uncivilized people will have no fear of God. At that time, it can be handed over to hundreds of people in Italy, and they can do whatever they want. But this is only the first condition. What about the second one? I saw the Italian speaking slowly. Article 2. In order to avoid such things happening in the future, we require the Dutch army to withdraw from Lanfang territory. This is impossible. Faced with the Italian officer's words, Governor Luton blurted out without thinking. Now he understood everything. The Italians were just trying to make excuses. Their target was Lanfang. However, Governor Luton's words did not make the officer stop. After he sneered, he took out a map and continued talking. In order to allow your country to have a clear understanding of the Lanfang border and avoid unnecessary conflicts caused by misunderstandings due to unclear understanding of the map, I have brought a map of Lanfang. Please take a look at it, Mr. Governor. Governor Luton subconsciously took the map, and his eyes almost bulged out when he saw it. This map is simply incredible and has meaning since ancient times. In this map, Lanfang occupies a vast area from the Barito River to Sarawak, roughly West Kalimantan and South Kalimantan in Indonesia. The conscience of heaven and earth, when did this Lanfang cross the Peng Gang River basin? This is completely diplomatic blackmail. And these damn Italians included all the best places in Dutch Borneo. This is totally unacceptable. Point thinking of this, Governor Luton said angrily. Major, such conditions are simply unacceptable. It is impossible for us to accept such conditions. Facing Governor Luton's words, the Major looked suddenly enlightened. Really? This is better. Some people happen to be dissatisfied with this condition. They think that this condition cannot reflect the meaning of punishment. They even think that Sumatra should be added, and maybe other islands can be added. Although the Major seemed to be joking, Governor Luton's heart grew colder and colder. He did not dare to bet on whether Italy would dare to do this. Major, please wait a moment. We cannot make the final decision on your request. We must report it to the mainland. Can we send a ship to Singapore? Sadly, the Batavia Telegraph has not yet connected to Singapore. This is all due to the short-sightedness of the predecessors, who believed that the cost of submarine cables was too expensive, and were unwilling to spend the money. At this time, Governor Luton naturally took it out. This is possible, but our patience is limited. I hope you can hurry up. So, accompanied by Italian warships, Dutch officials rushed to Singapore and immediately sent a telegram to the country. This telegram immediately caused a sensation throughout Amsterdam. Please add it to your favorites and vote for recommendations. There are 2 chapters today. Stop, fight, 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 rob, hand over all the recommendation votes, all. Chapter 105, Batavia under the muzzle, Part 2. Your Excellency Prime Minister, how should we deal with the blackmail of the Italians? In the Royal Palace in Amsterdam, King William III of the Netherlands was asking Prime Minister Heemskerk for his opinion. This 68-year-old old king is also tragic to say the least. The 3 sons he gave birth to have passed away long ago. Currently, only his 5-year-old daughter Princess Wilhelmina is still alive. It can be said that his population is withering. However, if I can still have a daughter at the age of 63, I have to admit that I'm getting stronger with age. Your Majesty, there are not many options we can use at the moment. The Christian Prime Minister said depressing words with a helpless expression. Some people will definitely say that we should seek help from Britain, France, and Germany at this time, especially since the Netherlands has close relations with Britain and Germany, and it is easier to obtain their support. This is very true. Asking for help from both countries can indeed gain the support of both countries. But what next? Will Britain and Germany force Italy to withdraw its fleet for the Netherlands? If not, what's the point? Besides, there is no free lunch in the world. If you ask others to help, do you need to pay for it? Don't forget, the Spice Islands owned by the Netherlands were coveted by even the British Empire. The 2 countries had fought many wars over this before. In the end, the Dutch fought hard to save this treasure. Although Britain later became more powerful, the Netherlands finally opened an opening to allow British ships to obtain trading permission. If the Netherlands asks for help, Britain will definitely further pursue its interests in the Spice Islands. So will the Dutch agree or not? Of course, it is inevitable to seek help from Britain, France, and Germany on this issue, but to what extent we need help? We need to talk to the Italians. To no point. Prime Minister Heemskerk has already had preliminary ideas for this. Your Majesty, I have sent Foreign Minister Becchio as plenipotentiary to Rome to discuss with the Italians. But then his voice changed. However, it is impossible to let Italy withdraw just like this. We will have to pay some price. Obviously, Prime Minister Heemskerk knew very well that the Italians were so aggressive that it was impossible to send them away without paying some benefits. As for how much it will cost, it depends on the results of Foreign Minister Becchio. Of course, as Prime Minister, he did not do nothing. He still had to send telegrams to Britain, France, and Germany asking for help. I believe that Britain and France, which have huge interests in Southeast Asia, do not want to have more power there. As for Germany, which has no interests there, it is also a very suitable mediator due to its good relations with the 2 countries involved. As for the Spaniards occupying the Philippines, Prime Minister Heemskerk had no hope. Now that Spain is in severe decline, it would be good if it could hold on to its few colonies. If it wants to express its opinions to the outside world, it is completely powerless of course. Before that, in order to avoid any uncontrollable situation due to any accident, Prime Minister Himskork also sent a telegram to the Dutch Spice Islands, asking them to exercise restraint. In fact, there is no need for Himskork to worry. Governor Luton has done a good job in this regard. "Ah, you all ready, Governor?" Luton asked a Dutch official while standing in the loading dock of the port. "It has been installed. There are more than 300 tons of various fruits, vegetables, and meat. I have personally inspected them and carefully selected them." Facing the answer of the official in front of him, Governor Luton nodded with satisfaction. "Very good, then send it to the Italian fleet. Don't let the Italians wait too impatiently." Doesn't this scene look funny? Governor Luton actually sent supplies to the Italians, who were threatening him, and he was also worried that the Italians would be dissatisfied if the goods were not good. This is quite a cool thing. Like me. It sounds like this was just a helpless move by the Batavia officials. Amsterdam's order made it impossible for them to deal with it. They had to argue with reason and avoid conflicts. So after thinking for a long time, the Batavia officials decided to do something. Two-pronged preparations were made. The first was to mobilize troops from surrounding areas to assemble outside the city to prevent possible conflicts with the Italians. The other was to appease the Italian fleet and show that they had no ill intentions, so they sent some living supplies to Italian officers and soldiers. Of course, Dutch officials were not sure whether such preparations would be effective. Many of the troops that first gathered around Batavia were indigenous soldiers, and their combat effectiveness was really doubtful. The number of white troops now about Batavia does not exceed 3,000. As for sending some daily necessities, it is unknown how effective this can be. Of course, in this case, Governor Luton also made a wise decision. In the Lanfang camp, located by the Kun River, Liu Nguyen, the commander-in-chief of Lanfang, was listening to the reports from the brothers below. "Commander, the Dutch in the Natter River have really withdrawn. I took my brother all the way deep for nearly 100 miles, and the Dutch didn't see anyone at all. The situation is the same when we investigate in Quentin village. The Dutch have retreated. It's the same thing we are seeing in Mount Bale." Several spies were dispatched to report on the situation one after another, making the leaders who were stranded here smile. After the spies reported the situation, Chief Zeng Zengsin stood up. "The commander-in-chief is really wise. With the help of the Italians, he allowed the Dutch to escape obediently without spending a single soldier. It is really like that Zhuge was alive, leader." Zeng racked his brains and finally succeeded in flattering him. This was really embarrassing for this big boss, and as Chief Zeng started, a burst of rainbow farts singing praises came to his face. "Old Zeng is right. I, the big boss, fully support the president's decision. As long as the president asks me to go west, I will go west and never east. Yes, I admire the chief's decision. From now on, everything will be subject to the chief's decision." Liu Nguyen looked at the scene in front of him and found it very interesting. You must know that these people made all kinds of weird complaints 2 days ago, but today they immediately showed all kinds of loyalty. If anyone really believed what they said, they would still count the money after being sold. Okay, everyone knows this news, so you don't have to worry about the Dutch. After a few days, everyone can go back. After all, the whole family needs you to support them. Liu Nguyen's words did not make these people stop flattering him, and a wave of more flattering people immediately rushed towards him. "Commander, if you don't know where you are, it's a blessing for me to be here, to watch the commander drink the Dutch away. Yes, we admire the commander-in-chief very much, and hope that we can follow him for a few days. This person is like this. When he is not allowed to leave, he wants to leave, but he is unwilling to let them go. It's not that these leaders are confused. These people are as smart as monkeys. The form was unclear before, and it was not safe enough here. Now that everything is clear, they want to stay here to see what benefits they can get. Chief Liu has already seen through these tricks. After sending these leaders away, Liu Nguyen asked a person around him, "Has Leader Liang come back?" "Just came back, resting in his room." "I understand. Go and do your work." After Sending the others away, Liu Nguyen came to Liang Lui's house alone. "Who? It's me, Liang." Luai opened the door with a tired look on his face. After closing the door, Mr. Liu thanked him quietly. "Luo, thank you and the brothers below for your hard work this time. You have made great contributions to our land Fang. I will not forget it, Chief. No matter what, this is all for the future of everyone. The only thing is, that it is a pity for the people of that village and the two foreigners. Lu, this matter will be rotten in your stomach. Don't let anyone know about it. Don't worry, Commander. I, Liang Luo, know this well, and will never tell anyone. Then, you rest first. I'll leave first." After receiving a satisfactory answer, Chief Liu left, leaving only Leader Liang who looked tired. Point 2 updates. Where are the recommendation votes? Let me see. Chapter 106 Rome Negotiations, Part 1. Although Italy and the Netherlands are facing a dark cloud in Southeast Asia, a storm is about to come. But the two countries know that the final outcome can only be decided in Europe. Therefore, Italy and the Netherlands attach great importance to this negotiation. The Netherlands has brought Britain, France, Germany, and Spain to make up the numbers, while Italy has brought, Germany. Well, Italy has not attracted a single country. Of course, this is on the surface. Who knows the actual situation? After all, international relations are now changing. Maybe the treaty signed yesterday will be torn up tomorrow. Due to the urgency of the matter, negotiations between the two parties began quickly. In the large conference room of the Prime Minister's office, the Dutch side, represented by Dutch Foreign Minister Becchio, and the Italian side, represented by Italian Foreign Minister Boccona, stood ready at the negotiating table. As for representatives from the four countries, Britain, France, Germany, and Spain, they sat aside to witness the negotiations between the two parties. Our country strongly condemns the siege of Batavia by your fleet, which has caused losses to merchants in many countries. Your country's behavior has threatened the stability of Southeast Asia, and is of a very bad nature. At the beginning, the Dutch plenipotentiary Foreign Minister Becchio stood up and expressed his attitude. "Are we threatening the security of Southeast Asia?" In response to the Dutch's remarks, Boccona, the Italian representative, gave the other party a contemptuous look. "Had it not been for your country's shameless killing of 2 missionaries from our country, this situation would not have happened at all. This is your country's own fault. I protest that your country's accusations are completely unreasonable. Our country will not accept such groundless accusations until the truth of the matter is found out." It was obvious that there was no way the Dutch representatives would admit this, even if it was really done by the Dutch army. Although the religious power in this era is not what it used to be, it will cause huge damage to the reputation of the Netherlands. In the era of coachmen, this damage would be nothing at all. But the Netherlands, which has weakened too much now, can cause considerable damage. So Becchio skipped the missionary issue and went straight to the other side. Your country's protection of land Fang violates the agreements between various countries on the security of Southeast Asia. Countries are not allowed to invade forces belonging to other European countries. Therefore, our country strongly requests that your country withdraw from its protection of land Fang. Faced with the words of the Dutch representative, Boccona couldn't help laughing. "Ha ha ha ha, Sir Becchio, your words really make me unable to bear it. Ha ha ha." Facing a burst of laughter from the Italian representatives, Becchio's face turned ugly. "Your Excellency Boccona, can you please restrain yourself?" The British representative, who was watching the negotiations between the two countries, saw that the atmosphere was not quite right and couldn't help but give a warning. Faced with the reminder from the British representative, Boccona stopped laughing. "I'm sorry, I really couldn't hold it back, because Mr. Becchio's joke was so funny." The black-faced Becchio said angrily, "Are what I said funny? Can you please tell me why?" Faced with Becchio's words, Boccona asked seriously, "Excuse me, Your Excellency, do vassal countries need to sign annexation treaties?" Boccona's words made Becchio think of something, and his face turned a little pale, but in full view of the public, he had to answer, "Most of it should be like that." Faced with Becchio's ambiguous words, Boccona immediately refuted him righteously. "What do you mean, most of them should be like this? I doubt your diplomatic level. After a disparaging remark, Bacona continued. Subsidiary countries need to sign a subsidiary treaty in order to be recognized by all countries. However, your country has never signed such a treaty with Lanfang, and there is no subsidiary relationship at all in theory and law. Then there is no way to talk about your responsibilities. This is between your country and Lanfang. The conflict in the Lanfang Republic is not, as your excellency said, it is an internal matter of your country. Our country has been killed because of the missionaries, so why can't we intervene? Bacona's words left Becchio speechless. It all comes down to the fact that the Dutch were too cautious. After Lanfang claimed that it belonged to the king vassal, the Netherlands had never dared to sign an affiliation treaty with Lanfang openly, but Chief Lanfang has always been a captain appointed by our country. Logically speaking, he should be a subsidiary of our country. Becchio did not have other options. He directly stated that the leader of Lanfang was a colonial official appointed by himself, and proposed that Lanfang was a vassal state. Facing the reason given by Becchio, Bacona asked back with interest, does Mr. Becchio mean that, as long as he appoints officials, he can claim his own sphere of influence? Becchio's heart thumped, and he regretted saying this, because he knew that, if he admitted it, it would bring endless troubles. The reason is simple. As long as he admits it, Italy will have countless ways to get the indigenous kingdoms of the Dutch colonies to accept its appointment the next day. At that time, Italy can also use this reason to seal its mouth. So he quickly defended. This is different. Our country has appointed Lanfang captain for decades. At this time, Bacona said seriously to the Dutch representative in front of him, this cannot be a reason, Mr. Becchio. I think you also know that this reason is simply untenable, so please don't come up with these ridiculous reasons. At this time, the British representative suddenly interrupted. Your Excellency, Bacona is right. If you still can't give a convincing reason, then please say something more practical. Faced with the sudden comments from the British, representatives from other countries were a little confused, especially Becchio, who was the representative of the Netherlands. His heart skipped a beat. He had a very bad premonition. Faced with the British representative's speech, Bacona, as the Italian representative, was not surprised at all, because Italy had previously made a secret deal with the British. Italy assured the British that Italy would only expand to the Dutch colonies in Borneo. Of course, there is also the reason why the fleet sent by Italy this time is too powerful, and it is difficult for Britain to intervene. Another reason that cannot be said is that Italy's performance in the Sino-French War as a force that contained the French Navy made Britain feel that it was giving appropriate support to Italy. In this era, the United Kingdom pays extraordinary attention to the French Navy. The French Navy ranks second in the world. As the basis for ensuring hegemony, the Royal Navy of the British Empire is always paying attention to the actions of the French. The whole of Britain is eager to give it another opponent, willing to see success. Of course, the British will not turn their attention to them until the Germans show sufficient interest overseas as Britain's support for Italy. Italy promised to exert its influence when the Qing dynasty wanted to purchase foreign weapons, especially in the navy, allowing it to give priority to British warships. It is true that Italy was using the influence of the Qing dynasty to make deals, and Britain happened to be worried about the reduction of its influence in the Qing dynasty, so the two hit it off. After giving guarantees to the British colonies, the two countries reached a unanimous decision with the support of the British behind him. Bacona can naturally feel confident. Mr. Flam is right. Becchio, please recognize the facts. Facing Bacona's words, Becchio couldn't help but look at the representatives of other countries sitting aside as intermediaries. The French representative was hesitant to speak, but finally shrank back. The German representative kept looking back and forth at the British and Italian representatives, as if he wanted to see something from them, and completely ignored Becchio's expectant gaze. As for the Spanish representative, well, let's ignore him. Unable to find support from the side, Becchio felt that he could not continue talking like this, and that he needed to take a break. At the same time, press the pause button on the negotiations. Sorry, I'm not feeling well today and need to take a rest. Facing Becchio's pause button, Bacona looked indifferent. No. problem, we can wait. But I hope your health will get better soon, because if the time is prolonged, uncontrollable accidents may easily occur, and the results of our negotiations may be overturned by then. Maybe the result will be better. It's possible, but I think the chance is too small. It's more likely that you will lose more. After the two bickered for a while, they both left. Becchio was anxious to go back to find out the situation and report to Amsterdam at the same time. Becchio also needs to report the results of today's negotiations to the Prime Minister and King Carlo. Please recommend and collect. Forget it, I won't ask for collection. Now it drops to dozens a day, which is really hard. Chapter 107 Rome Negotiations, Part 2. In the office of the Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister Despertus and Carlo were listening to Foreign Minister Becchio describe the results of today's negotiations. It seems that France and Germany currently have no better solution to the British decision to support us. After Becchio finished speaking, Prime Minister Despertus expressed his judgment. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. As long as the Dutch cannot find support from other countries, they will not be able to compete with our country at all, and can only obediently agree to our country's conditions. Confronted with the Prime Minister's words, the Foreign Secretary expressed his judgment. At this time, Carlo, as the king, couldn't help but ask, so do you think France and Germany will provide adequate protection to the Dutch? Facing Carlo's question, Becchio, who is the foreign minister, thought carefully and answered, it is not impossible, but the chance is too low, because first of all, the relationship between the Netherlands and France is not particularly good, and France's strength in the Far East cannot prevent our country from seizing Lanfang and other places, unless France sends troops again, but this it's too late. In addition, as for Germany, although the Netherlands has a good relationship with it, our country is its ally anyway, and Germany will not suppress its allies and support the Netherlands. Becchio's brief analysis reassured Carlo. As long as the Netherlands cannot obtain sufficient support from Germany and France, it will sooner or later succumb to the pressure from Italy. While Carlo and others were talking about the Netherlands, Becchio, the plenipotentiary representative of the Netherlands, was at the embassy looking at a telegram just sent from Amsterdam. Damn it, this is not what I need. I need help from the country. Let me deal with this. What do I think? Although Becchio complained in his mouth, he knew in his heart that this was a situation where there was no other way in the country and he could only let himself handle it. This made Becchio have a pessimistic prediction about the negotiations. Originally, the Netherlands was not strong enough and could only bring in other countries to support the situation. But now the people supporting the situation are on the other side, which does not make him feel frustrated. But even knowing this, Becchio couldn't just surrender and admit defeat. No matter what, he still needed to work hard. Thinking of this, Becchio opened the door and called his secretary. Prepare the carriage, let's go to the French embassy. That's right, Becchio's first hope is France. The reason is very simple, that is, France has certain strength in Nanyang. In addition, Italy cheated France in the previous Sino-French war. I believe the French will be happy to add to Italy's troubles this time. Sure enough, Becchio's idea was correct. He came to the French embassy and immediately met the French representative. This time, it's Ambassador to Italy, Goodwin. Your Excellency Becchio, our government is very indignant about Italy's barbaric occupation of your country's territory. Goodwin's words ignited a spark of hope in Becchio's heart. Thank you for your country's support for our country. I wonder if your country can provide more support during negotiations. Facing Becchio's request, Goodwin nodded and replied, that's no problem. We will make our position clear. Before Becchio could feel happy, Goodwin changed the topic. However, I would like to ask if Mr. Becchio is too persistent in placing all his hopes on the support of our country and the Germans. Becchio was a little confused after hearing Goodwin's words. What do you mean, Ambassador? I think your country needs to strengthen its own strength and let Italians see your country's determination to defend its colonies. Ambassador. Goodwin's words gave Becchio a bad premonition, but in order to confirm, he continued to ask, don't know how to increase your power. At present, Italy relies on the fleet in its hands, so your country needs some warships to increase its strength. It does not require defeating the opponent, but it must be able to harass the opponent's supply line. In addition, your country's military in the colonies also needs to strengthen its strength. If the ordnance is not enough, our country can sell some of it and get the goods directly from our colonies in Indochina. Goodwin's words moved Becchio a little, and he continued to ask, if there is a conflict between our country and Italy, will your country be able to help? This statement has made it very clear that being able to help in a conflict will inevitably involve the intervention of military force. And because Becchio knew that this was very important, he stared at the French ambassador after finishing speaking. Well, facing Goodwin's inquiry, Goodwin was somewhat unable to answer because he did not obtain this authorization from Paris. Ambassador Goodwin's hesitant words dashed Becchio's hope. He already knew France's attitude point. This is to let the Netherlands and Italy have a fight, and then the French will take advantage of it. He can see through this kind of thinking at a glance. Point he didn't talk much, feeling that he couldn't get the results he wanted from the French. So Becchio quickly left the French embassy to the German embassy. As soon as he got on the carriage, Becchio urged the driver, "I'm sorry, Mr. Robert is currently ill and needs to rest, so he can't see you." The words of the German embassy staff made Becchio heartbroken. Point the ambassador was still alive and kicking in the morning, but in the afternoon he was too sick to see guests. Although he knew that the other party was an excuse, Becchio still had the attitude of giving it a try. "I have something very urgent to ask Mr. Robert. I'm sorry, Mr. Robert is really unable to serve as director at the moment." The disappointed Becchio had no choice but to leave the German embassy. Point in a hidden window on the second floor of the embassy, the sick Lord Abot had a panoramic view of everything. "Sir, you really don't want to see him?" The secretary next to him looked at the disappointed Dutch foreign minister and couldn't help but ask, "Why are you meeting him? Can I change Berlin's decision at will? In this case, it is better not to meet him. At least both parties will not feel embarrassed." When Abert said this, he thought about it and continued, "In the next few days, on the grounds that I'm sick and need to recuperate, I will cancel all outing activities, including the negotiations between Italy and the Netherlands. I understand, Your Excellency." Abert understands Berlin's decision very well. One is an ally and the other is a friendly country. It is difficult for Berlin to be caught in the middle. Being able to participate in negotiations and act as a middleman is the limit of what Germany can do. Point with one avoiding him and the other secretly harboring evil intentions. Becchio's visit ended in vain. So in the subsequent negotiations, the helpless Becchio was unable to resist Italy's aggressive attitude. In the end, he had no choice but to accept Italy's blackmail, and the Dutch army withdrew from the Landfang sphere of influence designated by Italy. The result of this negotiation was a huge loss for the Netherlands. Not only did they lose the vassal state of Landfang, but the essence of Borneo was also captured by Italy. Of course, this was a brilliant diplomatic victory for Italy. "I finally had my first colony. It's so shameful that you still have the nerve to call yourself a great power. Moreover, this is a colony that has been mostly developed." Faced with such a good thing, everyone in Italy is very satisfied. Of course, this is not without sequelae. First of all, the Netherlands immediately decided to allocate 40 million Dutch guilders to purchase ships to strengthen its maritime power in the Far East. In addition, he sent another 5,000 troops to strengthen defenses in his colonies in Southeast Asia. The target was Italy, an evil neighbor. Of course, what the Dutch did had nothing to do with Italy because they were busy carving up the interests of this colony. Chapter 108 Governor Landfang's difficult childbirth. "Your Majesty, there is no need to send any more. Well, by Mr. Pedersen. Goodbye, Your Majesty." After waving to the Minister of Transport who boarded the carriage, Carlo returned to the palace under the sunset. "Captain of the guard, go and do your work, as you command, Your Majesty." Carlo returned to the office. After sending everyone away, he sat tiredly on the sofa and closed his eyes to rest. He has seen too many people these days, and when talking to these old foxes, he must be very alert to deal with them. He could handle 1 or 2 games, but having too many people would naturally make Carlo physically and mentally exhausted. After all, people's energy is limited. Suddenly, a pair of jade hands gently pressed on Carlo's forehead. Smelling the familiar fragrance, Carlo knew who it was without opening his eyes. "Nah, why are you here?" Nah, who was becoming more and more radiant, looked at him with love on her face. "I see that you are very busy these days, so I care about you." The concern from Na made Carlo look energetic, hugged him in front of him, and looked at him. "Thank you, my Naya cares. As a king, this is what I should do. By the way, I see so many people coming here these days. What's the reason?" Seeing Na with a curious look on her face, Carlo decided to satisfy her curiosity. "Isn't this the victory over the colony of Kalimantan? These ministers who smell something are eager to get involved." Carlo did not finish speaking, because there is another reason. That is, he is about to come of age, and his power will be greatly increased. Many ministers also know this, so except for a few, others are trying to release goodwill. Point of course, it is also reasonable to seek some benefits for the forces behind you, because the decision-making power of Italy's first governor of Borneo currently lies in Carlo's hands. Of course, these people had no intention of choosing the governor, because they also knew that this position would definitely be filled by someone from the king's faction. They were more competing for various departments of the colonial government. Don't underestimate these departments. As overseas colonies, the oil and water in these departments must be much richer. With the power in their hands, as long as they tilt a little in a certain direction, it will be huge wealth. You must know that these are the first batch of officials, and the profits involved are extremely huge. According to estimates by the Italian government, the value of various minerals and cash crops in Lanfang is as high as more than 1 billion lire. If coupled with the seizure of a large colony from the Netherlands, the value will be even more astonishing. Although such a large amount of wealth is occupied by local Chinese, the profits are still astonishing. After all, Lanfang's territory has been invaded to the point where only a small piece of territory in the lower reaches of Kunjiang River is left, and the rest is due to the withdrawal of the Dutch. Such a large territory naturally has various mineral and plantation industries. Although there are currently owners of these places, I believe these people are also mentally prepared to sell off these industries, and Italian domestic capital can't wait to become the recipient. After all, this is a ready-made industry, so it won't suffer a loss if it takes a little bit. That's why so many people come to visit His Majesty King Carlo. After all, he is the loyal object of the army. At present, this Italian colony is still under the jurisdiction of the military and needs to wait for the government to send officials to take it over, but these are not problems for Carlo. His bigger problem is that he has difficulties in selecting the first governor. That's right. Although Carlo currently has the right to choose the first governor, it is simply difficult to choose the people he brings along. Let's put it this way. Carlo didn't have many people to choose from who were qualified for the position of governor, and their abilities still needed to be improved. Because of the victory in the previous Sino-French War, some high-level people in the government moved closer to him. It was not until the Dutch colonies were taken over this time that officials began to gravitate towards their own monarch. However, among these people who fell in love with them, they wanted to choose someone who suited them. It's really not easy for people who expect it. The reason is simple. Carlo has higher requirements for this position. First of all, as Italy's first colony, the Somali Book Club can retreat. It needs to have enough ability to mediate the relationship between the local indigenous Chinese and the Italians, because Italy is pursuing the idea of developing and making money in this colony. So it can't be cleaned up first like other countries, which will reduce its revenue for several years. Of course, large-scale cleanup is not possible, but small-scale killing of chickens to scare monkeys is still possible. But in addition to these, the region also needs to assume the task of a transit station from Italy to the Far East, which is also urgent. Because the first batch of goods from Italy to the Qing dynasty had arrived at its destination and lacked its own maintenance base, the use of British shipyards and other facilities in the area caused the merchants who were not originally very profitable to lose some expenses. It's okay for a short period of time, but it becomes uncomfortable over a long period of time. In addition, we must also prepare to infiltrate the remaining Dutch colonies in Borneo. You must know that Italy only promised to invade other Dutch islands, but did not say that it would not take small measures against Borneo. This was a deliberately left loophole. Of course, as a Dutch diplomat, Minister Becchia also saw it and asked to amend it on the spot, but the Italians dragged him over on the grounds that the border had not yet been demarcated. Otherwise, why did the Dutch rush to send 5,000 troops? This was to prevent the Italians from continuing to cause trouble. Point of course, considering that the ink on the treaty is still wet, it is still okay to send people to investigate and infiltrate first. After all, the remaining Dutch colonies in Borneo were vast and sparsely populated. It was not easy to catch these wandering expeditions in the dense rainforest. You see, so many tasks require high capabilities, including coordinating ethnic disputes, developing the economy, building port transfer stations, penetrating the Dutch colonies, and, by the way, dealing with the former Landfang. In terms of official relations, this is just like a trumped-up prime minister at present. Carlo knows that there are no more than 5 people with this ability, and they are at least ministers in charge of one department. This makes Carlo find another one from where. Moreover, these people had nothing to say to a maid, so Carlo could only smile and speak to Naya. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I know this. His Majesty Carlo is the most powerful. Nothing can trouble you. Looking at Naya, who looked at him with admiration, Carlo became playful for a moment and said with a straight face, "No, one thing is difficult for me." The little maid, who didn't know the truth, asked curiously, "What can trouble your Majesty?" "I can't do it to have a baby." "Ha ha ha, your Majesty, you are so funny." As Naya said this, she couldn't help but quietly touched her smooth and flat belly with her hand. Why is there no movement at all? Not noticing Naya's little movements, Carlo hugged Naya and kissed her several times. "Okay, Naya, please go back first and come back to see you in the evening." "Okay, well, I'll give you a surprise then." After sending Naya away, Carlo cheered up and prepared to continue thinking about the candidate for governor. 2 updates. Please recommend if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World. It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, The Unexpected Governor Landfang. After thinking about it for 2 or 3 days, Carlo still found no suitable candidate, which made him want to choose the taller one from among the shorter ones. But thinking of the importance of the colonies in Borneo to Italy, he resisted the idea. However, the issue of the candidate for the governor has been delayed, and the Italian reception work has not been carried out. For this reason, the Prime Minister's office has sent people to urge it. "Your Majesty, I heard that you are worried about the candidate for Governor Landfang." Manager Algid, who had not been seen for a long time, suddenly appeared in front of Carlo. "Why did I forget about this person? I suddenly remembered this old man who had been a king for 3 generations. He must have something to do." "Yeah, I'm worrying about that." Carlo then told the old man his request for Governor Landfang and put aside all his own considerations. After listening to Carlo's story, Chief Legender touched his chin with grey beard and said, "From this point of view, it is really difficult to choose this candidate. There are not many people who are qualified for the position of governor. Yes, there are no more than 5 people with this ability in the government, but it is impossible for them to serve as the governor." Facing what Director Legender said, Carlo also complained of his own. "If there is no one in the government, then you can only find it outside the government. If His Majesty has no other requirements for this position, then you can still find it." "Who can I find here, Director?" Algid's words made Carlo very curious. Actually, His Majesty's choice of Governor Landfang is just a trumped up Prime Minister. So why not choose from someone who has actually been Prime Minister? Chief Legender's words opened Carlo's mind. Indeed, if you don't have to worry about the factional issue of the candidate, and no one is available, there is no better choice than those who have been prime ministers before. After seeing that Carlo had figured it out, Manager Algid bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, I will take my leave first. Thank you, Mr. Manager, for your help." Carlo took the old man's hand and said thanks, his expression sincere as never before. "It's just what I should do to share His Majesty's worries." After seeing off this political old man, Carlo finally breathed a sigh of relief. At least he had a candidate. Of course, his understanding of the alleged steward is also at a higher level. No wonder he can still gain enough trust after being the royal steward for so many years. He really has a set of skills. Of course, the palace steward gave the idea, and then Carlo needed to choose a candidate. The first thing that came to mind was the stern face of former Prime Minister Carlo. Needless to say, in terms of his abilities, if he had not been unlucky enough to encounter the Tunisian crisis, neither he nor Depretis would have thought of overthrowing him. Being a small governor of Lanfang is not easy, even if there are many things he needs to do. And there is another advantage of choosing Carlo, the former Prime Minister. Prime Minister Depretis will definitely agree. Although both of them are members of left-wing parties, Depretis is absolutely willing to kick him far away. In addition, Carlo is also the youngest former Prime Minister. Born in 1826, he is only 59 years old and can withstand the bumpy journey to Lanfang Point. Although Carlo severely stripped Carlo's face at that time, what is a political creature? Even if he has the hatred of killing his father, as long as there are enough benefits, he can still make an active long-lived friendship point. Although Carlo cannot reach this level, Carlo no longer cares about the trivial matter of saving face. How much face is worth? Let's start with £2. The more he thought about it, the more satisfied he became. Carlo immediately called the captain of the guard. Fellow, what is Carlo, the former prime minister, doing now? Faced with Carlo's sudden question about the former prime minister, the captain of the guard was stunned for a moment before speaking. Currently, Mr. Carlo lives in his hometown of Piacenza. In addition to planting flowers, he spends his time fishing or gathering with friends. It seems that the former prime minister lives a very comfortable life. Listening to the words of the captain of the guard, Felicimiki, Carlo couldn't help but say, "By the way, captain of the guard, I need you to go and invite the former prime minister to Rome." Faced with Carlo's words, Felicimiki was very surprised. But he will react quickly. "Okay, your majesty, I will send someone right away, otherwise I will invite you personally." He was very satisfied with the answer of the captain of the guard. Carlo could temporarily put aside the issue of selection that he had been struggling with until the former prime minister came over. Although the captain of the guard didn't know Carlo's purpose of asking the former prime minister to come to Rome, he felt that it must be something complicated, so he invited him personally. 2 days later, he rushed back to Rome with the former prime minister. "I never thought I would have to go back to Rome for a day." Looking at the scene outside the carriage, the former prime minister couldn't help but sigh. "No, this is just because you don't pay attention to it." The captain of the guard, who was riding in the same carriage, opened his mouth to cater to him. "No need to compliment me anymore. I know my situation. But I'm just a little curious as to why Carlo, the young monarch, suddenly remembered that I wanted to meet him. After all, he was a man who had been the prime minister, so he didn't care about the compliments given by the captain of the bodyguard. And he himself knows that he lost Tunisia during his term in office, making it impossible for him to return to politics. Soon the carriage arrived at the palace. After getting off the carriage, the captain of the guard led the prime minister through a series of scenes he was familiar with, all the way to outside Carlo's office. After a brief briefing, Carlo met the young man. "No, the young monarch. I have met His Majesty." Carlo bent slightly, showing due respect to the royal family. "Hello, Your Excellency Carlo. This is the first meeting between the two in the past few years. Compared with before, Carlo is like the rising sun, which unstoppably begins to shine as it should, while the former prime minister, like the setting sun, can only emit the last ray of sunset." Nowadays, the identity of the two people has changed, which is very sad. Carlo eventually began to speak first. "Your Excellency Carlo, how are you doing back home?" "It's not bad. It's nice to plant flowers, raise fish, and then chat and party with friends." Faced with Carolo's answer, Carlo decided to go straight to the point. "This kind of life is enviable, but you may not be able to continue living like this." "Oh, why?" Carlo explained why. "Because I would like to ask Your Excellency to serve as governor of the first colony in Italy." "Okay, because, Your Excellency." Carlo was a little surprised. He didn't expect the former prime minister to agree so quickly, which made him feel a little caught off guard. Looking at the young monarch with a surprised expression, Carolee explained with a smile. Although life is very comfortable in my hometown, I'm more accustomed to being busy. So no matter what His Majesty wants me to do this time, I plan to give it a try. Well, Carlo can see that the former prime minister has now let go of his inner baggage and can do as he pleases, but he has nothing to say other than envy in this state point. Since the former prime minister agreed to become the governor of Lanfang, Carlo informed him of all his requirements. The former prime minister listened to Carlo's many requests and smiled throughout the whole process without showing any other expression. It seems that he believed that Carlo's requests were within his capabilities. Now that the candidate has been decided, of course it must be reported to the Prime Minister, because this can no longer be delayed. So later that day, the Prime Minister received the appointment. Is this guy Carolee going to be the governor of Lanfang? Looking at the documents sent from the palace, the Prime Minister looked surprised. Although he didn't know why the young monarch appointed this guy as the governor of Lanfang, he immediately realized that this was an opportunity and kicked it away. So after a period of consideration, Prime Minister Desperatus signed his name. Of course, this news inevitably spread in Rome. However, compared with the surprise of middle and lower level officials, upper level politicians will not pay much attention to this appointment. Although it was somewhat unexpected, everyone knew that the former prime minister's political life was over, and that he had reached his limit as governor of the Italian colony. Chapter 110 Accelerating the colonization of East Africa. After solving the problem of Governor Lanfang, Carlo felt much better. After all, this is related to trade with the Qing dynasty, and this may be Italy's only profitable colony in the past 10 years. In addition to the Lanfang colony, Carlo was also concerned about Italian colonial activities in Somalia. I don't know. I was shocked when I found out. Currently, Italy has few major strongholds in East Africa. They are mainly in coastal port cities. The inland has not been developed much. For example, Italy currently controls Massawa, Beijing and Eritrea. In a few areas such as Darfur and Zorn, the vast interior has not yet been occupied, while in other places, such as Djibouti, which was taken over from France, and Berbera, Mogadishu and other places in Somalia. At present, there are also deep inland areas, all in coastal areas. This won't work. We need to speed up. After learning about Italy's colonial activities in East Africa, Carlo was not very satisfied. Of course, he also knew that operating East Africa had not received much attention before, because Italy's main focus was on Tunisia at that time. It was only after Tunisia suffered a setback that it began to increase investment. However, limited by Italy's national strength, the increase in investment was also limited. Chief Guard, please invite the Prime Minister over and tell me that I have something to discuss. Carlo asked the captain of the guard to invite the Prime Minister. Of course, colonization cannot lack the support of the military, so the Minister of Army and Navy was also invited. The military was the most active in the expansion of colonies. Not only did the two generals arrive before the Prime Minister arrived. So, when the Prime Minister arrived, he found that two military bosses were already waiting for him. Sorry, I'm late. When facing the Prime Minister, the two generals who had already arrived said that they had just arrived. Seeing that the military and political leaders had arrived, Carlo began to tell the purpose of calling everyone. As we all know, our country's current colonial activities are basically in East Africa. Many of them are funding private expeditions. This is too slow. Our country needs to speed up. I think it should be led by the government. I think it works. I think that's okay too. Carlo's words immediately attracted the support of the two military bosses. Although private funding for colonial activities cost less, the efficiency was too slow. If the government stepped in, it would be much more efficient than private funding. More importantly, when the government comes on stage, it needs to use the military, which is of course a good thing for the military. Facing the words of support from the two military bosses, Desperatus, as the Prime Minister, gave them a cold look. I don't object either, but the government doesn't have any extra money to pay for colonization. The Prime Minister's words made the two military bosses stuck. How could they send troops without money? How could they develop colonies without money? I remember that the government prepared 80 million lire to compete with the Dutch for Landfang, but only spent less than 50 million lire. Why is it gone? The counterattack from the Secretary of War, General Garlock, revealed without hesitation that the army knew all about government funds. Faced with the army secretary's point, Prime Minister Desperatus smiled slightly. It seems that the military is very concerned about the government. This is just the military's inherent sensitivity to funding. Facing the Prime Minister, Admiral Lake still gave an explanation, but his momentum was obviously much lower than before. Then, do you know that these remaining expenses have been included in the Landfang development expenses? The Prime Minister's words made the two military generals look surprised. The government must have acted too quickly. Seeing that the military was no match for the Prime Minister, Carlo had no choice but to take action personally. If the government lacks funds, the royal family can advance part of it. Of course, this requires the government to return the money to the royal family in next year's budget. Carlo's words immediately made the Prime Minister's excuse of using funds untenable. Everyone knew how rich the royal family was. Although we cannot say that we can just take hundreds of millions of liras casually, this would require selling off royal properties in various places, but the royal family can still come up with tens of millions of liras. Especially the Prime Minister also notes that His Majesty has taken a lot of benefits from the temples in India. Thank you for your Majesty's generosity. However, although the government has no money, it is also very important for Italy to open up colonies in East Africa, so let me consider where to transfer some funds after I return. This is the Prime Minister's submission. Compared with before, with the addition of a big royal benefactor, the military can completely dominate colonial activities. This is something he does not allow. Colonization can only be under the leadership of the government. This is why the government failed just now. Money reasons, but he didn't expect that His Majesty could be so determined. Now that the Prime Minister has surrendered, Carlo will certainly not embarrass the Prime Minister. Since the government is considering misappropriating funds from other places, this is not a good idea. Otherwise, the royal family can set an example and purchase a batch of bonds. Then, I would like to thank the royal family for their generous help. Facing the steps given by the king, the Prime Minister immediately took them. Next, the topic of colonization can continue. According to our intelligence, the current situation in East Africa is the most favorable moment for us. Among them, our country's main competitor, the United Kingdom, has just been driven out of Sudan by the Mahdi. According to their habits, they will not give up their occupation of Sudan, so our country is in East Africa. Just face the indigenous people. Another thing to note is that Johannes IV, the Black Emperor in Abyssinia, has unified the chaotic Abyssinia and our country's colonization in Eritrea. It's best to be cautious in your activities. After the captain of the guard told the current intelligence about East Africa, the Minister of Army and Navy had already made his own judgment. Of course, they already knew this information, but there was no harm in hearing it again. Our army can send 5,000 people for colonial activities in Somalia. Our Navy can be responsible for protecting the sea area and providing necessary help. Yes, both the army and the navy believe that the Somali region can be given priority in colonial activities in East Africa. Carlo also agreed with the idea of the navy and army. Although Eritrea is closer, it is really not suitable to start a conflict with Abyssinia, a powerful country in East Africa, and its domestic plateau terrain is very unfavorable to Italy. Besides being poor, there are no resources that Italy covets. As for the Prime Minister, he also knows something about the situation in East Africa, and also believes that it is more appropriate to give priority to soft persimmons, so he also agrees with the military's suggestion. However, for the purpose of saving funds, he still prioritized drawing a boundary for the military. This time the government can only provide 30 million lire in funding. Two generals, you need to consider the scale. Rest assured, Prime Minister, we will not exceed funding limits. Facing the Prime Minister's words, the two generals patted their chests in assurance. Everyone applauds His Majesty the Sultan. This is an extra update for the Sultan. Chapter 111 Somali Colonization. Kismayo is a port at the mouth of the Juba River. It was occupied by Italy in 1876. However, Italy did not go deep into the interior. It only occupied this colonial point as a trading port and exported goods from Italy to nearby tribes' products, and also purchased some local livestock and other local specialties. How can I say my life was good or bad? At least I didn't lose money. However, the atmosphere has become different recently, and Errol Mensah, who is tired of his career, was the first to feel it. How is this going? He pulled over an acquaintance and asked, "Mensah, you are back. You said these soldiers were sent from home. Now that Major Tovani is no longer the commander in the city, I heard that a colonel named Crowley has taken over the army." The acquaintance's answer made Mensah feel that it was unusual, because there were too many troops. He saw at least 100 soldiers wandering around the city. He remembered that, when he was chatting with Major Tovani, he said personally that with the more than 400 garrison troops he had, he could defend even tens of thousands of local natives. As for why he can get to know Major Tovani and seem to have a good relationship with him, it must be mentioned that he is gifted in communicating with the local indigenous people. He can communicate with the locals fluently in Somali. In addition, he can easily win the favor of the locals. Someone with such talent should be rich, so Mensah's caravan is the most profitable in Kismayo. Since it is the most profitable caravan, it must involve local powerful people, and it is reasonable for Major Tovani, as the commander of the Kismayo garrison, to get involved. In addition, local civil affairs officials also invested in the company point with the participation of local military and political officials. Mensah's business has grown bigger and bigger. He has become the largest businessman in Kismayo, and he handles 1/3 of the local transaction volume point. Therefore, he is famous not only in Kismayo, but also in various strongholds throughout Italian Somalia point. However, this fame does not necessarily bring only benefits. Not only did he just return to his home, but before he had time to take a rest, he saw Major Tovani's adjutants hurriedly looking for him. "Hello, Lieutenant Carlo, what brought you here?" Seeing the second lieutenant who was brought in by the servant, Mensah immediately greeted him with a smile. As a businessman, he is very polite to everyone, especially Lieutenant Carlo, who is also the adjutant of Major Tovani, and he will not lose his courtesy point. However, compared with Mensah's smiling face, the adjutant's eyes were a little evasive, and he spoke in a stiff tone. "Mr. Mensah, the major is waiting for you at the headquarters." Second Lieutenant Carlo's words made Mensah's heart tremble. It was not that he was afraid that he would be in danger, but that he had a premonition that summoning him this time would not be a good thing. "Please wait a moment, I'll change my clothes and come." After Mensah retreated to his room, feeling uneasy, he secretly called a confidant and handed him a note. "If I don't come back by night, go to this place immediately to find a man named Lyle and tell him that I need his help." This is an escape route left by Mensah, but I hope it won't be used. "Okay, sir." Facing Mensah's instructions, the confidant who had been raised since childhood nodded vigorously. After explaining the matter, Mensah immediately changed into clean clothes and followed Lieutenant Carlo out. Lou Mensah was also familiar with the command post, and soon he arrived at the command post located at the military camp in the east of the city. This headquarters is obviously different from before. Not only the guards have changed, but there are also drills in the military camp, which makes Mensah's heart even heavier. "Mr. Mensah, Colonel Crowley and Major Tovani are waiting for you inside." Walking to the door, Lieutenant Carlo took it as a gesture of invitation. Mensah had no choice but to go in. When he entered his house, he felt something unusual, because compared to the messy headquarters in the past, it had been cleaned up now, and there was a large map of Somalia hanging on the wall, and there was also a large wooden table with there was actually a sand table set up, and 2 officers were pointing on it. "Report, Mr. Mensah has been brought in." Following Lieutenant Carlo's voice, the 2 officers raised their heads. He knew Major Tovani, but this was the first time he saw another officer with a stern face, and with the rank of colonel. He believed that this was Colonel Crowley. "Hello, Colonel Crowley." Major Tovani, facing Mensah's familiar greeting, Colonel Crowley raised his eyebrows. "You know me. The whole of Kismayo knows about the colonel's deeds. How can anyone not know you, Colonel?" Crowley did not pursue Mensah's confusion, but asked him about it. I heard that you are the most successful businessman here. I don't dare. That's all because of everyone's modesty. Although Mensa was polite, he did not deny it. Since there is no denial, that's it. So Mr. Mensa should be familiar with the surrounding tribes. So after receiving Mensa's answer, Colonel Crowley immediately stated the reason for summoning him this time. Mr. Mensa, we summoned you this time because we have a task to ask for your help. I'm just a businessman. I may not be able to do it. Colonel Crowley completely ignored Mensa's refusal. It doesn't matter. It's easy to do. Our military would like to ask you to be our guide and lead us to find those tribes. Facing Colonel Crowley's words, Mensa waved his hands repeatedly. This is not okay. I can't do it. These tribes are his food, clothing and parents. If he is asked to lead an army to find these tribes, he knows what is going on without even thinking about it. He will not agree at all. Don't be too busy saying no to Mr. Mensa. Colonel Crowley had obviously anticipated Mensa's reaction. How is it possible to just let him pay without getting anything in return? I saw him take out a document and put it in front of Mensa. This is a Langfang franchise license. As long as you can lead us to find those tribes, then this license is yours. The license that Colonel Crowley produced made Mensa envious. He was not only interested in doing business in Kismayo, he was also very well informed. He knew that this flimsy document would cost at least 5 to 6 million yuan in the country lira. Because the government is very strict in issuing franchise licenses in Langfang, only with such a license can one buy various spices that are specialty products in Langfang. Although the spice business does not allow people to get rich like it did in the last century, it is certain to make money. So now he is a little hesitant. After all, he is a businessman and not a politician. How can he just let it go? Can you let me think about it? Okay. But it'll be one night at most. We'll have to find someone else tomorrow. Faced with Colonel Crowley's words, Mensa left the military camp uneasily. After a sleepless night, with dark circles under his eyes, he came to the military camp again. Colonel Crowley, can I take another look at that permit? Mensa's words brought a smile to Colonel Crowley's face. Can what happened in Mensa is not isolated. It is happening in Italian strongholds in Somalia. Many businessmen with ties to the local tribes were invited over. When they faced the conditions imposed by the government, they did not hesitate to betray the tribes they were trading with. There were even greedy businessmen who asked the military to allow them to lead people to conquer the local indigenous people. The Italian army relied on these merchants to find tribes one after another. When these indigenous people faced the modern Italian army, their outcome was already doomed. Chapter 112. Young Marconi. The Po River is the largest river in Italy. It originates from the Alps and flows through Turin, Alessandria, Rovigo and other cities. In addition, its basin includes Milan, Brescia, Ferrara and other cities. It can be said to be the largest river in Italy. Economically important rivers. Since this place is extremely economically capable, there is a huge demand for power, and the use of water conservancy and steam power is also very ordinary. Now a dam on the Po River is taking shape under the hard work of workers. This is the construction site of the Pavia hydropower station, Italy's first large-scale hydropower station. Speaking of the construction of this hydropower station, it also attracted the attention of power scientists in other countries, because it was the first large-scale alternating current hydropower station. Yes, Tesla has developed a large generator. Currently, this generator has a power of 2.5 kilowatts. In order to build the Pavia hydropower station this time, Westinghouse Electric Company, under the leadership of Tesla, built for such a large generator. Of course, it hasn't been transported yet, because the dam has not been completed yet, and it will block the Po River of 4 to 500 meters. It will take some time. However, this still attracted many people to come and watch. Among so many people, a young man, led by an adult, also came to watch the dam being built. What a spectacular sight. The young Marconi looked at the built dam and expressed his heartfelt admiration. Guglielmo, be careful not to fall into the river. His mother and Jimson left behind and was worried about her son. Don't worry, he knows it's safe. As a father, Giuseppe Marconi told his wife not to pay too much attention to this. Speaking of which, Marconi was born into a very wealthy family. He was smart since he was a child, but he did not go to school at all because his mother and Jimson directly hired a university professor to be his tutor. Not envious, of course. He has been smart since he was a child, and he has lived up to his mother's expectations. He is very dedicated to learning, completely surpassing his peers. He is very interested in physics, electricity, and electromagnetism, and often uses school equipment to conduct experiments. His private teacher is also very fond of this teenager and allows him to borrow books from the school library. Point of course, this is also inseparable from Marconi's intelligence. Whoever sees such a little genius would not want to teach him. And this time they were able to travel more than 100 kilometers from Bologna to see the Pavia hydropower station, which also shows his parents' love for him. While the Marconi family was looking at the hydropower station under construction with great interest, a group of people passed by them holding drawings. Marconi's sharp eyes saw someone he had seen before. Mr. Tesla. Mr. Tesla. The boy's voice was so unique that Tesla, who had just passed by, looked back and saw a well-dressed boy shouting to him with a surprised look on his face. "What's the matter, kid?" Tesla was still a little curious about a young man calling him. Not many people knew him now, mostly in the scientific community, and the appearance of a young man made him feel novel. Facing Tesla's inquiry, Marconi said excitedly, "Mr. Tesla, I have read the Principles of Electromagnetic Applications you published in Science Weekly. I have also done experiments for this. It is really amazing." Marconi, who turned into a little fanboy, talked endlessly about his admiration for Tesla's scientific papers. Tesla was also very curious about Marconi. "By the way, I remember that this paper requires at least a college level to understand. How old are you now?" "I'm 11 years old." Marconi's words made everyone with Tesla look at the young man in surprise. After all, he is a young man with a thin skin, Marconi explained with a blush on his face. "I still don't understand a lot about your paper, so I asked teacher Declan, and he gave me a detailed answer." Even when Marconi gave an explanation, people around him praised him repeatedly. After all, the Marconi in front of him was too young. This was knowledge that only college students could understand. It would not be exaggerated to praise him as a genius. Marconi was very embarrassed to face the compliments from around him, but his parents came over and greeted the people around him. After everything gradually calmed down, Marconi looked at Tesla with admiration. "Mr. Tesla, can I follow you to the hydropower station?" Logically speaking, children should not be allowed in construction sites, mainly because they are afraid that children do not understand the dangers and are prone to accidents. But looking at Marconi with an expectant look on his face, Tesla relented for some reason. "You need to ask your parents about this." Tesla's call undoubtedly gave Marconi the green light, and he immediately pestered his parents and said he wanted to follow Tesla in for a look. Faced with the pestering Marconi, his parents reluctantly agreed after some hard work. So Marconi, who looked excited, followed Tesla and his party into the construction site. After repeated instructions from his parents, "Mr. Bick, these dimensions must be accurate because the hydraulic turbine is relatively precise. If there is any deviation, it will have serious consequences. You must pay attention to the location of transmission lines. The height must be more than 5 meters to prevent people from touching them." Tesla always talked about a lot of boring topics. Even an adult would probably yawn. However, Marconi still listened with interest and sometimes even secretly asked Tesla why he did what he said this way. Tesla rarely had the patience to explain the boy's curiosity one by one. Of course, such time could not last long. The sun would set soon, and Marconi had no choice but to leave and return to his parents. "Mr. Tesla, you must write to me when you have time." Tesla, who felt that this young man was a promising talent, also waved goodbye. "Don't worry, I will definitely write to you when the time comes." Seeing the big one and the small one saying goodbye, everyone else showed big smiles. Of course, they didn't know that this scene would be written into textbooks in the future and become the story of the first contact between two giants in electricity and electromagnetics. Chapter 113 The Governor's First Fire. Carlo did not know about Tesla's meeting with Marconi when he was a child because he was paying attention to the news of the arrival of former Prime Minister Caroli and his party in Pontianak Point. Yes, after nearly 2 months of hard sailing, the former Prime Minister of Caroli, no, the Governor of Caroli and his party finally arrived in Lanfang Point. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that Governor Caroli was older, they could have reached Lanfang faster, but it was not too late. Former Lanfang officials, led by Deputy Governor Liu Nguyen and Garrison Representative Major General Slater, made a special trip to Pontianak to greet them. Your Majesty the Governor, welcome to Pontianak. As the Deputy Governor, Liu Nguyen's attitude was very low, almost groveling. Of course, the reason why he did this was also very simple. He was trying not to make the governor dislike him. Liu Nguyen was very afraid of the governor general who had served as prime minister, because he knew that the governor of Caroli was a very powerful person in Italy, but in this place, where the emperor was far away, he didn't have the final say point. Even though he was the deputy governor, Liu Nguyen knew that this was just what the Italians wanted, because of their urgent needs. If you really think you are a lieutenant governor, that is the way to die. I didn't see Major General Slater. Although he was usually polite, there was a hint of refusal in his tone. How could Liu Nguyen not hear it? In the final analysis, Italy still regrets giving himself a higher position, but if Liu Nguyen wants to withdraw voluntarily, don't even think about it. Even if he becomes a clay sculpture deputy governor, he is still a deputy governor, and after all, he is also the second person in Lanfang colony. They can always compete for some say in the family and other Chinese people. Of course, he also wanted to improve the relationship as much as possible, but Qiu Bei didn't understand. The gold he sent was returned directly, and the beauty was kicked out on the grounds that women could not appear in the army. It can be said that facing Major General Slater, who was unable to make any progress, his methods did not work, and he could only place his hope on the former Italian Prime Minister who was about to arrive. Hello, Liu. I'm glad you can host this welcome ceremony. I'm very happy. The amiable Caroli made Liu Nguyen feel that he was in a good mood. Of course, this was not the time to show off. After Liu Nguyen said a few simple greetings, he immediately gave up his seat because there were others waiting behind him. Major General Slater, thank you for your efforts so that I can see a peaceful Lanfang. Your Majesty the Governor, you're welcome. This is what I should do, Mr. Litoko. After greeting the welcoming officials one after another, Liu Nguyen took the opportunity to speak. Your Majesty the Governor has arrived in Pontianak, and the people in the city are eagerly awaiting it. I hope the Governor can pay your respects to your visit. The people in the city have prepared a banquet for you. This was said in Guangzhou dialect. Although Liu Nguyen worked hard to learn Italian, the time was too short and the learning was not complete enough. In order to avoid making people laugh, he had better not show his shame. Of course, a translator had been prepared long ago to translate Liu Nguyen's words to Caroli. After listening to Liu Nguyen's words, Caroli said with a smile, "Please thank everyone for your kindness on my behalf. Although I really want to participate, my health does not allow it. Please let me rest for a few days before meeting you again." Although the governor of Caroli refused, Liu Nguyen could hear the kindness in his words. I didn't think it through well, so I might as well let the governor take a break first. I don't know about the handover of government affairs. Let's postpone it for a while. I believe the people who came with me also need to rest. Then, please get in the car first. The resting place is ready. As Caroli and others got on the carriage immediately pulled them to a carefully selected place in Pontianak City. As the governor, Caroli even lived in the palace of the former Sultan of Pontianak. Caroli was really tired after traveling all the way. After all, his age. But no matter how tired he was, he still managed to gather his energy and briefly understand Lanfang's situation. But before he could take a closer look at the documents in front of him, there was a knock on the door. Come in, secretary. Dos came in. What's up? When he returned and saw that it was his secretary who had been with him for many years, Caroli asked him the reason for his visit. Sir, your attitude today, your feeling, it's very wrong. It's not like my previous style. Caroli spoke for his secretary. Yes, my lord. Facing the secretary's doubts, Caroli calmed down and explained. In the past, in Italy, it was because I was familiar with everyone, and I knew everyone well, so I could act strong. But in the colony of Lanfang, my eyes were darkened, and I didn't know anything, so how could I be too strong? Besides, the situation here is complicated, and requires more cooperation with local people to complete the work, so there is no time to clean up these local forces one by one. After listening to the explanation, Dos nodded. Prime Minister, no, Governor, I understand. I will pay more attention at work. Caroli said he was taking a break, but he was still paying attention to the situation in Lanfang, especially in terms of government operations. Of course, he also knew that the colonial government could never be as efficient as the mainland, but appropriately improving the efficiency of the government was an issue he needed to consider. 3 days later, Caroli held its first meeting. Since it was the official appearance of the governor, no one was neglecting it. They were all prepared early in the morning. Everyone, I'm very happy to have everyone attend this meeting. This is my first time working overseas, and I believe it is also the first time for many people. After a brief opening remarks, Caroli immediately got down to business. Our task in Lanfang is not easy recently, because it is very important to our country. Before I left, the Prime Minister and His Majesty talked to me about this issue. And I think the important reason that currently restricts the development of Lanfang is the port's navigation capacity. After reading the information about Lanfang, I found that the largest port in Lanfang is currently Pontianak, and Pontianak can only navigate 3,000-ton sea vessels. This was okay in the past, but in today's ever-changing world, it is definitely not feasible, so Kunshandayan port must be widened and deepened. With Caroli's words, everyone present knew that this new official was the first to get angry. After taking office point at this time, there could not be any ignorant people who came up to look for him and were unhappy. They were all waiting for the governor's next words. The Pontianak port must have a navigation capacity of 10,000 tons so as to solve the shipping problem. Although the new Pontianak port director didn't want to stand up, he had to stand up now. Your Majesty the Governor, I would like to excuse you. It is a bit difficult for Pontianak to reach the navigation capacity of 10,000 tons, because the Kunjiang River mouth is only 6 meters deep. We want to expand it to 9 to 10 meters that can pass 10,000 ton sea vessels. This project is too large and very uneconomical. The annual dredging cost alone will not be low. Director Green, I understand what you are talking about. I did not say that I would expand the current Pontianak port to a navigation capacity of 10,000 tons. My idea is to open another port for Pontianak. Caroli's words made many people at the scene look at each other, because Pontianak is a river port. Since the outlet of Kunjiang River is in swampy terrain, it is impossible to build a port, and Pontianak is its best port choice. If you want to open a seaport, then this place is 20 to 30 kilometers away from the sea. How to solve the traffic problem of this newly opened seaport point? Seeing the situation at the scene, Caroli smiled slightly, and then he spoke out his blueprint. This is Digan, a small port located on the seaside. The water depth in the port is pretty good, reaching about 8 meters. What's more, the topography of Digan is very good, with mountains on both sides surrounding it. More importantly, it is 27 kilometers away from Pontianak. As long as we open it up, it will be a port that can meet our needs. As for the reason for the distance, it is very simple. We just need to build a railway connection. Caroli's words shocked everyone at the scene. This was a big deal. Without 30 to 40 million lire, it would be impossible to complete the blueprint he mentioned. And where did the money come from? As if he knew what they were thinking, Caroli immediately expressed his own solution. The cost is not small, so I plan to have the government pay part of it and then sell part of the area to raise funds. Caroli's words made Liu Nguyen's eyes light up, and he saw him speaking. I wonder if the governor is planning to sell the land part of the terminal and its warehouse area, as well as some commercial and residential land, will also be sold. Caroli's answer was not only felt by Liu Engun, but also everyone else present felt the huge benefits. Pontianak is not only the core city of the Peng River Basin, but also the capital of the Italian Lanfang colony in the future. For such a city with various trades, it goes without saying the value of its port. As long as it can occupy a position, it must be a stable and profitable business. Since there are interests, there are people who are not willing to lag behind. Your Majesty the Governor, how much money are you prepared to let the government invest? The government must invest in building railways, and the government must account for half of the investment in ports. Caroli's words brought the venue into a climax, and many officials started talking in whispers. Caroli is very satisfied with the performance of these people. It seems that he has set the fire first. Speaking of several tasks assigned by Carlo, Caroli believes that building a trade transfer station is the easiest, because Lanfang's trade itself is relatively large. However, due to the monopoly of the Dutch and, in order to ensure Batavia's status, other intentional restrictions on local infrastructure development. After Italy occupied this place, there were of course no restrictions, and with the help of Italy king trade, there was an urgent need to expand the port and build various supporting facilities. Of course, Caroli only asked the government to contribute half of the money. It was not because the government could not afford the money, but because he had his own purpose. First of all, Caroli needs to take advantage of this opportunity to win over all forces for his own use. Who is willing to listen to him sincerely without giving him some sweet dates? Only by letting them know that they listen to him can they get candy, and these people will behave themselves. Follow your own ideas. In addition, social funds can also be gathered to speed up the development of Lanfang. Caroli believes that government funds alone are somewhat powerless for the development of Lanfang, not to mention that Lanfang still needs to pay 30 million lire in taxes to Rome every year. This has even slowed down the development speed of Lanfang colony a lot. So what else can he use without using social funds? Relying on domestic capital alone would not lead to domestic conflicts with Lanfang. As a qualified politician, Caroli would not allow such a thing to happen. Caroli's words in Pontianak soon spread throughout Lanfang. In response to the governor's move to sell half of the land in Pontianak Newport, powerful businessmen from all over the country were moved by the news. Finally, half a month later, the governor general came up with a plan. 30 plots of land were drawn across the entire port. Some of these plots were in locations that made people jealous at first sight, while others were less conspicuous. Of course, these land plots can basically make money, but making more or less is a matter of ability. And half a month after the announcement, the fierce auction began. After a fierce battle, merchants from all over the country gained something. The total auction amount reached 16.71 million lire. Among them, the top bid was the port's eastern terminal. This 120-acre piece of land was won by the Liu family for 4.17 million lire. This also proves that the Liu family not only has political support, but is also not inferior economically. As for this lively scene, Caroli saw everything. Update. Please vote for recommendation. Chapter 114. Carlo in a dilemma. Governor Caroli was very prosperous in Lanfang, and Carlo was certainly not bad at all as king. Now he lives a very leisurely life. After many ministers change their attitudes, he can also be exposed to the daily work of monarch. Don't think that Carlo will reach adulthood in 1 year, and these jobs or powers will be in his hands. If it hadn't been for his excellent performance several times before, let alone gradually gaining power, he might still be busy with his studies. Now that he has the power, Carlo will not let it slip away from his hands. So he has been working hard to adapt to this life during this period. Chief of Guards, please have this document delivered to His Excellency Bacona at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Chief Guard, I have already read the plan from the Ministry of Transportation. Please leave it to the Prime Minister. Chief Guard, bring me some food. I'm hungry. Carlo took the simple food sent by the captain of the guard and listened to his next arrangements while eating. Your Majesty, you will meet with the Minister of Agriculture, His Excellency Mark Leder, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The estimated time is 1.5 hours, and then you are preparing to receive Bishop Malif. This is the Bishop of Palermo. He is a friendly party to our country. Hearing this, Carlo couldn't help but speak. Why does the Vatican still choose a pope who hates our country, even though Pius IX was inspired by God? Do they really intend to continue to waste time with our country like this? The captain of the guard couldn't answer what Carlo said because it involved too much, and he, a little captain of the guard, couldn't interrupt. Point of course, Carlo did not expect the captain of the guard in front of him to speak, because the difficulty in getting along with the Vatican can be said to be a chronic problem in post-unification Italy. After so many prime ministers have taken over, there is still nothing that can be done against the Vatican. It's like the tofu has fallen into the ashes, and you can't blow it, or beat it. Let's take the current Pope Leo XIII as an example. This pope sends letters of protest to Italy more than twice a year on average, protesting Italy's plunder of the church. In addition, he also sought help from Germany, France, and Austria-Hungary to join them in opposing Italy. He was simply an anti-Italian dickhead who was shot 10 times and still wanted to lead the Vatican against Italy. Point of course, if you strip away the Pope's anti-willing stance, he is still very capable. He is resourceful and enthusiastic, and attaches great importance to the economic benefits of the Holy See. Soon after taking office, he acquired a large number of stocks and securities in Austria, Bavaria, France, and Belgium. In addition, various enterprises were established, such as electric automobile companies, flour companies, and Roman banks. Politically, Leo XIII inherited the views of his predecessor Pius IX, advocating that the Roman Catholic Church should resolutely oppose political freedom and democracy, oppose the separation of church and state, and oppose civil liberties and freedom of religious belief. But in terms of actual policies, he showed greater flexibility. Shortly after he succeeded the Pope, in order to unite France against Italy, he proposed that Roman Catholicism did not pursue only one form of government, but could accept any of the 3 forms of government: monarchy, aristocracy, or democracy. One form of hope was that Catholics in France would retake the Papal States for the highest good of the Church. Okay, it's back to the Papal State. The people in the Vatican have not given up on the Papal State yet. They are really a bunch of old diehards living in the Middle Ages, when they still want secular power. After having divine power, the Italian government is fully aware of the Vatican's actions, but given the Vatican's status in the world, Italy cannot take any action. Sometimes Carlo really envied communism. At least he didn't have the confidence to say, how many divisions does the Pope have? But now the Vatican issue does not require him to have a headache. It is enough for the Prime Minister. After taking the blame, Carlo felt much better and was more motivated for the rest of the trip. After Carlo had a simple lunch in the office, he continued to process documents. Then came the meeting with the Minister of Agriculture, and then the meeting with the Bishop of Palermo. When both of these are completed, today's work comes to an end. At the beginning of the lanterns, Carlo, who was physically and mentally exhausted, cheered up and had dinner with his family. His younger brother, Prince Vittorio, is already 17 years old. With the family's excellent genes, he looks handsome and quite, not even a dwarf. The 2 sisters are no longer as eccentric as before. Every move they make, while sitting on the table, looks very ladylike. Only occasionally, a hint of beating emotion flashes in their eyes, and you can feel that their childlike innocence is still intact. Carlo couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Everyone has grown up a lot. At this moment, his mother, Queen Mother Margherita, tapped the cup with a spoon, making a tinkling sound, which brought Carol back to reality. Carlo, I have something to tell you. Carlo felt a headache as soon as he heard his mother's words. Mom, I told you that I have no intention of attending the banquet at the moment. I need to focus more on government affairs. Faced with Carlo's words, the Queen Mother continued to speak. Carlo, this is not a matter for you alone. This is a major matter for the entire kingdom. It is simply unimaginable for the king to have no queen. After finishing speaking, Queen Mother Margherita glanced meaningfully at Naya, who was standing behind with some uneasiness. Well, Carlo did not enjoy the pain of urging marriage in his previous life, but he made up for it in this life. Mother, I'm still young and there is no need to worry about choosing a queen. Facing the forced marriage of his mother in this life, Carlo felt a little overwhelmed. Why? Don't you worry. The choice of queen is very important to Italy. It doesn't matter if you like it. When her mother Margherita said this, she glanced at the little maid who was about to lose her balance. Mother, you must give me time to think about this issue. So, how long do you need? It was obvious that Carlo's delay did not achieve his goal. At least Queen Mother Margherita did not intend to let him go just like this. Carlo, who was being stared at and asked by his mother, didn't know how to answer. The younger brothers and sisters sitting aside watched with relish as Carlo, the older brother, shrank in front of their mother. Mother, Vittorio has actually reached the age where it's time to get engaged. Because as a king, I can't make a choice right now, but Vittorio definitely can. Vittorio opened his mouth wide and looked surprised as he watched his brother plausibly use him as a shield. The spoon in his hand fell to the ground without even realizing it. Mom, I finished eating. Goodbye. Carlo, who hadn't eaten a bite, quickly left his chair and ran away, leaving only his stunned family members seeing her eldest son fleeing quickly. Queen Mother Margherita looked a little disappointed, but she turned to look at her second son and immediately recovered. Vittorio, who was being watched by his mother, immediately felt a chill coming over him. Vittorio, you are not young anymore. There are 2 chapters today. I'm asking for votes confidently. Chapter 115. Good momentum. The morning sun shone in the room. Carlo, who was fully dressed, glanced at the little maid who was still sleeping, sighed, closed the door gently, and left. After Carlo left, Nia opened her eyes, and tears flowed out of her eyes. It was obvious that Carlo's comfort last night did not make her forget the pain. The Queen Mother's words were like a nail, piercing her heart deeply. The reality must be faced. Cinderella only appeared in fairy tales after all. Carlo didn't see all this. Of course, his heart was just as heavy at this time. As a king, he had to make choices. Carlo then immersed himself in work, trying to ease his emotions. So during this period, everyone found that His Majesty turned into a workaholic, dealing with various affairs day and night. No one could dissuade Carlo from turning into a workaholic. Only Queen Mother Margherita came to persuade him once, and then stopped coming. Carlo will continue this state until the end of the year, when all Italian data is freshly released. Carlo looked at the data in front of him, and showed an expression of joy. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, the government has done a very good job this year, and all indicators are moving towards good development. Faced with Carlo's praise, Prime Minister Desperatus did not dare to take credit. Your Majesty is overly complimentary. This is the result of the efforts of all colleagues, especially the 2 projects promoted by His Majesty, which have allowed Italy to taste the sweet fruits. Although Desperatus did not say it explicitly, Carlo was satisfied with his attitude, because it was a gesture in which the Prime Minister acknowledged his contribution, and at the same time, there was a hint of bowing to himself in his words. Although it was very obscure, Carlo could hear it, after having been among these old foxes for so long. Since the Prime Minister knows what he is interested in, Carlo will of course have to step down. Although there are other colleagues and external reasons. After all, you are the Prime Minister of Italy. Without your supervision and support behind the scenes, Italy would not be able to achieve what it is today. Well, after a few compliments were exchanged, the Prime Minister left. After the Prime Minister left, Carlo carefully read the government's annual work report. In this report, the most conspicuous thing is that the economic situation is very good. This is not a small good, but a great good. Italy's total foreign import and export this year reached 3.117 billion lire, of which export growth was very impressive, reaching 1.541 billion lire. In this export list, Germany has replaced France as Italy's largest export country, reaching 301 million lire. Of course, it is also Italy's largest importer, with Italy's imports from Germany reaching 404 million lire. However, compared with Italy, which mainly exports agricultural products and various raw materials and primary processed products, Germany mainly exports coal, iron ore and various industrial products. That's right, Germany's #1 export to Italy is coal. The coal needed by Italian industry basically comes from Germany, France, and Austria. However, due to the trade agreement between Germany and Italy, Germany's coal has completely squeezed out the shares of the other 2 countries. Italy imported more than 7 million tons of coal from Germany, with a value of 171 million lire. Currently, there is only one small and medium-sized coal mine in Sardinia in Italy. The lignited mines can only be used as domestic coal, and its annual output is only about 1 million tons. Except for this coal mine, the other coal mines in Italy add up to less than 500,000 tons. Coal shortage is the current situation in Italy. In addition, in terms of iron ore from Germany is also an important source for Italy. Of course, German iron ore itself is not very rich, so not much is exported to Italy. But who made Italy's domestic iron ore poor? So the Germans started a second-hand business, importing high-quality iron ore from Northern Europe and then selling it to Italy. Some people may ask, why does Italy not import its own products from Northern Europe? It has to go to Germany to buy them. Just open the map and you will know that the shipping distance between Italy and Northern Europe is nearly 7 times longer than the distance to Italy via Germany and Austria. Although sea transportation is cheaper than rail transportation, when the distance increases so much, it is more cost effective to go through Germany and Austria. Therefore, some capable people started a business of exporting iron ore to Italy. Although the profits were not high, they could not withstand the large volume, and still made considerable profits. Of course, Germany can only deal with high quality iron ore, while Italy also imports iron ore from other countries, such as Austria-Hungary, Spain, Turkey and other nearby countries. In fact, Italy not only imports minerals, but also the second largest importer of grain in Europe. Speaking of which, it is also due to climate. Italy's climate is not friendly to staple crops such as wheat and corn, so Italy has a huge gap in this area. On the other hand, Italy has an advantage in more economical crops such as figs, olives, and grapes. Therefore, on the one hand, Italy exports economical agricultural products, and on the other hand, it imports grain from Eastern Europe to meet domestic demand. Therefore, Italy is both a major agricultural exporter and a major food importer. But in general, this is more mountainous and less densely populated, relatively, and Italians have to make a choice. Of course, this year, Italy exported various agricultural products with a total value of 349 million lire, and imported various grains with a total value of 312 million lire. For Italy, agriculture is not only a way to make money, but also the key to livelihood. Of course, in addition to the traditional trading countries, the trade volume with one country has grown very alarmingly this year, and that is the Qing dynasty in the Far East. This year, the total trade volume between Italy and the Qing dynasty reached 361 million lire, of which Italian exports were 147 million lire and imports were 214 million lire. Italy's exports are mainly arms, various machines and parts. After the Sino-French War, Italian arms finally caught the king's attention, and artillery and rifles finally opened the door. One more thing, His Excellency Governor Zhang, who was in charge of Guangdong and Guangxi, purchased 9,000 rifles and 48 artillery pieces from Italy after the war, as well as corresponding ammunition, and became a major user of Italian arms. As for the machines and parts, this is very clear, and it is also a benefit brought by the Sino-French War. As for the rapid increase in Italy's imports from the Qing dynasty, it is also good news. Because Italy mainly imported raw silk, tea, tung oil and other specialties from the Qing dynasty, it was also thanks to the Sino-French War that Italy was able to import these commodities from the Qing dynasty. You must know that this was a business of Britain, France, the United States and other countries before. Italy was able to grab a certain share with the help of the Qing government. Although it is a business deal, when the prices are about the same, the hints from the government are enough to make those businessmen who rely on adults have enough psychological bias. Therefore, this allowed Italy to grab a lot of shares. For this reason, its minister in China protested to the Italian minister and the Qing government more than once, condemning their partiality. However, they had just won a victory over the Qing government, and now they were in high spirits. In response to the protests of the foreign ministers, Takai was stunned. With exports maintaining rapid growth, Italy's economic momentum is very good, which is most reflected in the government's fiscal revenue. This year, Italian fiscal revenue reached a record high of 1.42 billion lire, which is full proof of economic growth. In addition, overseas immigration has also dropped significantly this year to 161,000. This also shows that the Italian economy allows more people to live in the country without having to travel across the ocean to settle abroad. These data are also an affirmation of Carlo. Without his promotion, Italy would not be able to get a foothold in the Far East. Faced with this achievement, Carlo is not proud, because the key is to ensure continued growth of the Italian economy. But before that, Carlo still has one big thing to do, and that is to overturn the matter of his coming of age, to take charge of the new year. Yesterday, I missed a chapter, which disappointed everyone. I would like to apologize here. Due to something delayed, everyone has been waiting for a long time. In addition, this chapter is also for the same reason. The steamed buns will be filled in tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Adulthood. Today, in the grand banquet hall in the palace, a group of people were singing and dancing. If you look carefully, you will find that these people are relatively older. Even the youngest ones are over 40 years old, and the older ones are even in their 70s or 80s. For these people to sing and dance, there must be a reason why they have to dance, because in the center of them dancing in a circle, Carlo, wearing traditional Italian clothes, quietly looked at the group of people who were trying their best to dance the old disco. As the dance came to an end, Ferdinando, Duke of Genoa, the eldest of the Savoy family, shouted, "Tanti auguri per il tuo battesimo, best wishes for your coming of age ceremony." As he spoke, cheers erupted immediately, and everyone threw flowers in their hands to Carlo, declaring his coming of age. After doing all this, these middle-aged and elderly men were a little out of breath. After all, they are old. How can they not be tired? After doing these high-intensity activities, the Queen Mother Margherita also knew this, so she waved countless maids to come on stage with various drinks, but these were all drinks, not wine, because she was afraid that someone would get drunk and lose their temper. Of course, no one present thought about drinking here. Although wine may be prepared in other families, Carlo is also a king after all. Unlike other people attending the coming of age ceremony, and many people were drinking drinks while paying attention to today's protagonist, His Majesty Carlo. Many people have expectations for the king's pro-government. They expect that His Majesty will take action after taking office. This will be another good opportunity for power reshuffle. Of course, there are also people who are worried about this. For example, Ferdinando, Duke of Genoa, the eldest member of the royal family and his grandfather's brother, spoke earnestly next to Carlo. "Carlo, today you become an adult. I didn't want to say it, but I feel like I can't do it without saying it. I heard that you have the idea of replacing the prime minister. How is that possible? Uncle, you are worrying too much." Facing his uncle's words, Carlo looked surprised. He thought it was incredible. Moreover, the eldest member of the royal family, who was not concerned with politics, could ask questions. Carlo felt that there were definitely a lot of rumors outside, and the captain of the guard did not tell him, which was a bit derelict in his duty. Facing Carlo's answer, the Duke of Genoa said with satisfaction, "It's better if you don't. It's better if you don't. I'm afraid that you are young and energetic, and you will make such a move because of what happened before. It's best not to touch the prime minister when you first take office. If you want to do so, then you have to wait until the time is right." The Duke's last words were completely whispered into Carlo's ears. It seemed that the great uncle also knew that such things should not be known to others. Seeing that his uncle didn't believe it, Carlo could only say helplessly, "Uncle, I have never thought about it like this at all. I know there are some rumors outside, but they are not true. I have not thought about changing the prime minister at the moment. Besides, Prime Minister Depretis has done a good job, and I'm very satisfied with him. Work, that's good. You can take care of it yourself. After Carlo sent his uncle away. His uncle the regent, the famous playboy in Rome, and uncle Amedia, the duke and regent of Aosta, appeared in front of him. Carlo, the speaker just told me that your acceptance ceremony will be held the day after tomorrow. Facing the words of his uncle, the regent, Carlo couldn't help but cover his nose with his hand. Why did it smell like alcohol? Aren't all the drinks provided non-alcoholic? Yes, uncle. Carlo couldn't help but slap his nose with his hand a few times to make the smell dissipate faster. That's good. Don't worry. I will definitely attend on time. Looking at his uncle who was burping, Carlo still couldn't hold it back. Uncle, drink less. Don't worry. I know what's appropriate. The Duke of Aosta left a few words and left unsteadily. You know what the heck? There have been quite a few illegitimate children in Rome these past few years. Looking at his uncle leaving, Carlo said something inwardly. The Duke of Aosta really paid less and less attention to the occasion and actually came to his coming of age ceremony drunk. Then Carlo couldn't care less about his uncle because the Prime Minister came over. Your Majesty, congratulations on your coming of age. Thank you, Prime Minister. Under your guidance over the years, I have been able to learn so much knowledge. Prime Minister, you are definitely half of my mentor. Your Majesty, you're welcome. This is what I should do. You see, it's good to talk to the Prime Minister. Everyone looks friendly and behaves like a monarch and his ministers, of course. I don't know if people can believe such a scene point, but Carlo didn't need them to believe it because he really had no intention of changing the Prime Minister. Changing the Prime Minister is a big deal, and there are many issues that need to be considered. Even if Carlo wants to change the Prime Minister, it will take at least half a year to prepare. Although Prime Minister Despretis is a pro-French faction, Carlo still does not want to replace him at present. Despretis is very good at his job and has made no other moves. Carlo does not want to change to a new Prime Minister, and Carlo can also guess something about this sudden trend of changing Prime Ministers. Not only is there someone who has taken a fancy to this position, but Germany and Austria are also indispensable behind it. But as long as Carlo doesn't relent, no one can replace Prime Minister Despretis, so Carlo spent a little longer talking to the Prime Minister. He needed to send a signal that he had no intention of changing the Prime Minister, and many people understand such signals. I believe this trend will subside in 2 days. After all, this requires the king to be dissatisfied with the Prime Minister. After talking for a while, Prime Minister Despretis also left Carlo's side very knowingly. After all, there were others waiting. As today's pig's trotter, Carlo then talked to everyone else one by one. But overall it was pretty good, except that it took a little longer. This coming of age ceremony didn't end until nearly 10 o'clock in the evening. After all these people left, Carlo was ready to return to his room to rest. But while walking through a corridor, the little maid Naya suddenly appeared. Your Majesty, do I have something I can talk to you about? Looking at Naya, who looked hesitant in front of him, Carlo turned to the attendant beside him and said, "You should leave first." After the attendant quietly left, Naya whispered, "Carlo, I want to get out of here." Why? Carlo was a little surprised when faced with Naya's words. You know, Naya's words made Carlo silent. He had thought about it before, but he didn't expect Naya to decide so quickly. Then, when do you plan to leave? Faced with Carlo's question, Naya bit her lip and said, "I'll leave tomorrow." After saying that, the little maid put her jade arms behind Carlo's head. "Can you leave me a souvenir?" Now that Naya had said this, Carlo was still hesitant. He picked up Naya with both hands and walked to his room impatiently. I believe there will be another strong storm this night. The plot of The Little Maid is over. I originally planned to have an illegitimate child, but I'm afraid that everyone won't want to see it. You decide. Chapter 117. The situation is great. When Carlo woke up in the morning, there was no one on his hands. He was about to get up and ask, but gave up after thinking about it. But after all, he was still concerned. After breakfast, Carlo asked the captain of the guard, "How is she?" Although Carlo's words were meaningless, how could the captain of the guard, who was a confidant, not know who the question was? So he answered immediately, "Miss Naya, she left early this morning." She took the earliest train back to Potenza. After hearing what the captain of the guard said, Carlo said something unexpectedly. "Do you think what I did is right?" Carlo's seeming question was answered only by the captain of the guard, Filmaki, after careful consideration. "There's nothing right or wrong about this. It's just an inevitable choice. When you grow up, Your Majesty, don't be too entangled." The captain of the guard's words of persuasion were only heard from Carlo. "No, you don't understand. Leave me alone for a moment, as you command, Your Majesty." Yes, Carlo thinks they don't understand, and maybe it's a bit pretentious to say it, but this is Carlo's first love in his two lives, and first love is the most precious. It's fake that Carlone doesn't feel heartbroken when he sees his beloved woman leaving talk. But what the captain of the guard said is right. This is also an inevitable process of growing up. Although it is not perfect, it is life. Carlo will keep this memory deep in his heart and just leave a good memory point. When he came out again, Carlo had given up because the country still needed him. For Carlo, the most important thing at the moment is tomorrow's pro-government ceremony. Although he had actually taken back power, there was still some name Carlo needed. For example, before this, nominal power was shared between the regent, speaker, and prime minister. Although Carlo regained most of the power through his own efforts. But after all, the name is not justified, so he is most looking forward to the inauguration ceremony. After tomorrow, he will become the legitimate controller of power. The current power structure in Italy is actually a bit like Germany's dual constitutional monarchy. The king is the controller and mediator of great power, and the prime minister just takes over the power of running the government from the king. As long as the king doesn't agree with him, no matter how good he is, he can still be replaced. Of course, this is only a possibility. If the prime minister's popular prestige is too high, even the king will need to consider the impact. However, Prime Minister Depretis does not have this kind of prestige. Or in other words, there are no more than 2 people in Italy who have such prestige, including Prime Minister Cavour and Garibaldi. It's just that both of them have passed away, so now Italy's prime minister is more like the top official of the government and cannot be independent. While Carlo was looking forward to tomorrow, in the prime minister's office, Depretis, as prime minister, was a little troubled. What troubled him was the dispute between his 2 confidants. Prime Minister, the king will hold a pro-independence ceremony tomorrow. It's time to make an idea. Home Secretary Sabo looked at the Prime Minister with a worried look. "How do you make up your mind? Do you still want to do something? You can't do anything drastic at this time, otherwise the Prime Minister may be replaced at any time." Rivera, the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, who is also a confidant, countered this opponent. Sabo did not look at the Minister of Commerce and Trade, but continued to persuade the Prime Minister, who was sitting motionless. "You are completely placing your hope on the king. Although the king has given a guarantee, everyone knows that it is not advisable to put your hope on other people's guarantees. Then, what do you want the prime minister to do? Do you want the prime minister to oppose the king's pro-government?" Sabo felt a surge of anger at Rivera's rebuttal. "I have never said that I want to oppose the king's pro-government. This is simply unrealistic. At present, we need to focus more on winning over other people. Before the king takes control of the political situation, we must act first. This is not to arouse greater suspicion. That is simply not feasible." Confronted with Rivera's cowardly words, Sabo became completely angry. "Wouldn't it arouse suspicion if you don't do anything? At least this will save the prime minister's position. As long as we are in control of the prime minister, then others will not." The argument between the 2 confidants was interrupted by Prime Minister Depretis. "I can understand your asphalt, but I know exactly how to do it, so I don't need to say it anymore." Depretis' words caused the 2 of them to stop fighting again, but judging from their expressions, they were still unconvinced by each other. At this point, Depretis has no choice because the 2 of them are different. Rivera is a general of the pro-French faction and a strong political support for Depretis, but Sabo is much simpler because he recognized Depretis' political charm and came to join him. Therefore, of the 2 of them, one agrees with Depretis' political philosophy and the other agrees with his political charm. Although you can't see any difference on ordinary days, the difference will show up at critical moments. Rivera starts from more factional considerations, while Sabo thinks more from the Prime Minister himself. So one of them is slow and the other is urgent. These are all choices made with different considerations. As for Depretis himself, he was in a dilemma, and he didn't know what to choose. This is also his weakness, some indecisiveness, but now that his prestige is still there, the dispute between the two can be suppressed. So that he could only leave the Prime Minister's office in despair. However, even though they left, the tension between the two of them was not released. They each looked at each other, snorted from their nostrils, and left one after the other. Sabo looked at the Minister of Commerce and Trade walking in front with a gloomy expression on his face. After returning to the carriage, he seemed to have made up his mind. Leaf, don't send me back yet. I want to go for a walk on the street. Okay, Your Excellency. The coachman's answer made him think deeply. Regarding the Prime Minister's indecision, Sabo felt a burst of anger. How could he have taken a fancy to this person at that time? Forget it. I need to change my clothes. Sabo took out a set of ordinary clothes with a hood from the carriage and changed into them without saying a word. When the carriage turned to the Avenue St. Errol's, he stopped the carriage. You go back first. I have something to deal with. As you command, Your Excellency. When the carriage left, Sabo put on his hood. There were many celebrities living in this street, but this time his target was not them. It is an inconspicuous house on the corner of the street. Few people know that Alleged, the palace steward, lives here. He came to the door and rang the doorbell without hesitation and determination. Sorry for the late posting. Chapter 118 State Grid. The day's work began again. Carlo sat in the office looking at the mountains of documents in front of him and sighed. These are all the consequences of pro-government. Although his power has increased greatly, the number of documents that need to be approved by himself has also increased greatly. Speaking of which, Carlo asked for the huge increase in workload. He was asked to take most of the work into his own hands. However, there is nothing you can do about it. As a pro-government person, you always need to understand the various tasks of the government before you can be prepared. So during this period, officials at all levels of government could see Carlo's signature on the documents. Of course, many people were dissatisfied with Carlo's performance. The main reason was that Carlo did not make adjustments to the government after taking office. However, these dissatisfied people are divided into two groups. One is the kind who want to fish in troubled waters, and the other is the kind who had previously joined Carlo. Of course, Carlo would not pay attention to those who wanted to fish in troubled waters. As for those who had surrendered before, Carlo also had no explanation. If they didn't even have this patience, they were not worthy of Carlo's attention. After seeing that Carlo had not moved, the wave gradually subsided. The Italian political scene has become calm again, but under the calm situation, various political giants are watching Carlo's every move. They will not let go of any clues, trying to seize the opportunity in future politics. Carlo did not pay much attention to these people, because his status and power determined that everyone who wanted to challenge the position of Prime Minister must move closer to him and gain his approval. This is the characteristic of the dual constitutional monarchy. You must be recognized by the monarch before you can become the Prime Minister. Now Carlo just wants to finish the work at hand and doesn't pay much attention to other things. However, his wish was not fulfilled. When he was trying to reduce the thickness of the documents on his desk, the guard took another pile of thick documents and placed them on his desk. However, the efforts paid off. After a morning of struggle, the number of documents on the desk was reduced by 1/3. Looking at the results of his efforts in the morning with satisfaction, Carlo spoke to the captain of the guard who appeared in front of him. Who are you having lunch with? The Minister of Industry, His Excellency Stam, has arrived and is waiting for His Majesty. Then, let's go. Don't keep him waiting. Arriving at the private small restaurant, Industry Minister Stam was already waiting here. The somewhat pudgy Minister of Industry quickly stood up after seeing Carlo's arrival. His Majesty, Your Excellency Stam has been waiting for a long time. He was so busy at work that he forgot the time, so he came late. Facing Carlo's explanation, how could Stam take it seriously? Your Majesty has a lot of things to do, and it is my honor to wait to have lunch with Your Majesty. Besides, I haven't been here long, so I should wait for your majesty. Carlo sat down after the attendant pulled out the chair. Haha, you are just too polite. Facing Carlo's words, Stam smiled apologetically. After both of them were seated, the food was served quickly. The fragrant food aroused Carlo's empty appetite. Let's eat first, okay? For a moment, there was only the sound of knives and forks and chewing in the restaurant, and the two people's eating postures were also different. Carlo ate quickly, while Stam was more gentle. About a quarter of an hour later, Carlo, who was full, put down his knife and fork, and Industry Minister Stam also put down his knife and fork. Both knew it was time to talk things over. Your Excellency Stam, what is your Ministry of Industry planning to do regarding the promotion of electricity? When Carlo invites guests to dinner, there will inevitably be something to discuss. Stam had already anticipated this. Yes, Carlo can't wait to bring Italy into the fast lane of electrification. Although Italy lacks the resources for electrification, in this era of free trade, as long as there is no war, the problem is not that big. Of course, Carlo has not forgotten this hidden danger, but he still needs time to prepare. Your Majesty, this is the support plan for electricity prepared by our department. Please take a look at it. Stam took out a document from his bag and handed it to Carlo. Carlo took the document and read it immediately. The document listed a lot of clauses, mainly tax exemptions and other aspects for factories that use electricity as power. Regarding the exemption clause of the Ministry of Industry, Carlo asked several questions about the exemption, based on his own understanding, and Stam answered them one by one. Carlo, who received a satisfactory answer, then praised him. It's very good. This clause will greatly promote the application of electricity. I very much agree with it. Facing Carlo's praise, Stam took over with a smile. This is all your majesty's credit. If your majesty hadn't helped us make the decision, this plan would not have been come out so quickly. Stam was right. If not for Carlo's urging, the Ministry of Industry would not have been so determined in this promotion plan. You must know that electricity is a new technology, and many people will choose to treat new technologies with caution. And Carlo has the memory of future generations, and of course he is not willing to let Italy waste time like this. Therefore, promoting the development of electric power in Italy has become Carlo's top priority. Needless to say, it's still the result of your hard work. After getting satisfactory results, Carlo asked another thing. Your Excellency Stam, after the electric power promotion plan is implemented, the demand for electricity will increase significantly. Do you have any response plans? Faced with Carlo's question, Stam, the Minister of Industry, immediately responded. Your Majesty, our department has also considered this. In response to the demand for electricity, we plan to use a public-private approach. Our department will build a number of thermal power stations to provide electricity nearby. At the same time, we will guide private capital to invest in power construction. A public-private partnership approach will ensure the supply of electricity. Facing Stam's answer, Carlo shook his head to express dissatisfaction. Although this method can be used as an emergency, it is not the best method. Facing Carlo's objection, Stam looked like he was listening. Your Majesty, please correct me. I think that although the current electricity production in Italy is still in its infancy, we must see that it is the result of no planning, which also results in the lack of a standard for electricity supply. This is not conducive to the promotion of electricity use, and disorganized electricity supply should not. If this continues, they need a standard. Regarding Carlo's words, Stam asked tentatively, then your Majesty thinks we should set a standard first? Yes, I think the 220V figure is reasonable. That's right. Carlo directly borrowed doctrine and used it directly from the later dynasties. Of course, he also notes that even industrial electricity currently does not meet the standard, so he did not mention 380V industrial electricity. Not many factories can currently afford this thing, because current electricity costs are not affordable at all. The voltage set by His Majesty is very reasonable. Where it makes sense, Stam doesn't know. Stam had no objection to the answer given directly by Carlo, because there are not many factories using electricity at present, and it is not worth his objection. It is not enough to set standards. We need to build power stations on a large scale, so that people can feel the changes brought about by electricity, and promote their use of electric lights. When Carlo said this, he threw out a plan that he had already prepared. So this power construction plan promoted by the government and combined with private capital is not strong enough and needs to be reconsidered. Facing Carlo's words, Stam couldn't sit still. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Industry has limited funds and cannot support large-scale power construction. Moreover, how should the excess power produced by this be used? There is some truth in Stam's words. Unlike other products, electricity cannot be stacked and stored. The electricity produced must be used. Carlo was not worried at all by Stam's inquiry. This is easy to handle. If the industry cannot use up the electricity, then we will provide electricity to the private sector. At present, it is too inconvenient to use oil lamps in China, and it is also easy to cause fires. So as long as the government provides some guidance and large-scale production, the cost will be reduced. With this reduction, electricity will be supplied to thousands of households, enough to allow power stations to operate at full capacity. Hearing the king's words, Stam wanted to speak again, but before he could speak, Carlo spoke out what he was worried about. Of course, I also know that building a power station on such a large scale will put a lot of pressure on funding. How much funding can your Ministry of Industry provide now? Less than 30 million lire. Hearing the words of the Minister of Industry, Carlo did feel a little lacking. Let's do this. Your department will find a way to raise 30 million lire. If it's not enough, go to the Prime Minister to help you solve it. Then the royal family will spend 70 million lire to jointly establish a company specifically responsible for the production, supply, and maintenance of electricity. Specifically responsible for the construction, production, and maintenance of electricity in Italy. Carlo began to use the temple funds obtained from India, which was what he had planned from the beginning. For the electrification of Italy, he must be involved and have a controlling and driving role. When Stam heard this, he became a little anxious. It's not that he disapproves, but that he has seen that such a company will inevitably monopolize a country's electricity production and supply, and the Ministry of Industry or the government will lose the power of control if it invests in this way. Your Majesty, it isn't appropriate to contribute funds like this. No, don't worry, Sir Stam. After reassuring the Minister of Industry, Carlo continued. Your Ministry of Industry will first provide 30 million lire of funds, and then provide 10 million lire of funds each year for the next 4 years, so that we can all get 50% of the shares. Faced with the conditions given by Carlo, Stam thought about it and agreed. This company destined to monopolize a country's electricity was born during the conversation between the two. Your Majesty, what name should we give to such a company? The Minister of Industry, who had reached the end of the discussion, remembered that he had not yet given a name to this company. Then, let's call the State Grid Corporation of China. When he thought of the world's largest electric power company in later generations, Carlo said the name without hesitation. Chapter 119 Internal Combustion Engine? How could I forget this? Carlo looked at the newspaper in front of him and muttered to himself with regret. A newspaper was placed in front of him. On the mimeographed picture, a middle-aged man with a smile on his face was taking a photo with a weird car behind him. Although the newspaper called it an internal combustion engine automatic car, Carlo knew that it had another name. A car standing next to the car is Benz. Of course, Benz does not receive praise now. On the contrary, the world's first car he built was ridiculed by many people and newspapers because it kept breaking down and was ridiculed as radiating smelly monster. So his figure did not appear on the headlines or on page 1 or 2 of the newspaper, but on page 4, which made people laugh. Carlo also saw this weird 3-wheeled car accidentally, and the memory in his mind was instantly stimulated. Don't think wrongly. Carlo is not planning to start the automobile industry. The current automobile is still in the exploratory stage. He can at most provide some support to dreamers in Italy who have the same idea. I dare not say more than 10 or 200,000 lire. Carlo consciousness can generously donate it. Point of course, this is not his limit. The main reason is that automobiles have not yet become industrialized. It would be difficult for Carlo to start an industrialized automobile manufacturing industry by himself. Therefore, the most Carlo can do now is keep up with the development of automobiles and work hard to prevent Italian automobile research and development from falling behind. He paid more attention to the core of the car, the research and development of the internal combustion engine. This is a good thing. If nothing else, increasing funds in advance to develop better and more efficient internal combustion engines can improve Italy's transportation. This is a way to change Italy even more. For example, in mountainous areas, where railways are difficult to connect, if young people here want to go out and see the world, they have to walk or ride donkeys to nearby larger towns, then take a public carriage and spend another 1 to 2 days or even 3 or 4 days to get there to nearby cities. If he wants to go to other cities, it is easier if there is a railway. If there is no railway, he can only take a boat or continue to take a carriage. The cost and time will also increase greatly. Such expenses are enough to prohibit an ordinary person. This also increases the isolation of the countryside, which is not conducive to cultural and language exchanges. It is not a good thing for a country to close a region. In the same way, the cost and time of transporting goods are the same, which will increase a lot of costs and raise their selling prices, which will in turn cause a blow to both consumers and producers. Impeding the flow of goods will also hit production capacity and prevent the Italian economy from taking off completely. One more thing, the current domestic high-speed rail construction is also to strengthen the circulation of people. Although the high-speed rail suffers serious losses, the economic benefits it brings are not comparable to those losses. That's why China's high-speed rail will continue to be built. This is a good way to speed up the flow of people. Carlo knows that internal combustion engines have this ability and can benefit Italy a lot. This is not only the economic benefits brought by its exports, but other benefits are even more amazing. That's why Carlo regretted this. He only left the influence of electricity in his mind and completely forgot about the role of the internal combustion engine in promoting society. It was not too late to remedy the situation. Carlo decided to increase research and development efforts on internal combustion engines and strive to develop better and more efficient internal combustion engines that could contribute to Italy's economic construction. This goal is not too difficult for Carlo because he has the ability to make money. Although he cannot be called the richest royal family in the world, investing in the research and development of internal combustion engines and throwing away 10 to 20 million lire every year is just like playing. The wealth of the Savoy family is well known. Not to mention, Carlo still has so much temple wealth left. If he doesn't use it for this, why are he waiting for it? Thinking of this, Carlo called the captain of the guard. Baron, I need you to help me investigate who is doing research on internal combustion engines in the country. Okay, your majesty. Faced with Carlo's request, the captain of the guard, Felicimich, agreed without hesitation. A qualified bodyguard should not have too many doubts. He only needs to faithfully perform his tasks. In this regard, His Excellency the Baron is very qualified. Also, contact well-known foreign internal combustion engine researchers. If they are willing to work in Italy, try to recruit as many as possible. As you command, your majesty. With Carlo's order, Filmic turned around and planned to leave, etc. Carlo stopped the captain of the guard again. Faced with being interrupted one after another, Felici was not impatient at all. He looked at the young king quietly, waiting for his majesty's next instructions. Although his majesty looked troubled, as if he was constipated, he still waited patiently. Carlo also knew that his expression was a little ugly, but he had forgotten the person. What could he do? He could only search hard in his mind. He was not a historian, nor did he travel with an encyclopedia. He relied on memories in his mind. After so many years, except for those few who are really famous, the names of other people have long been blurred. The name Carlo wanted to think of was the inventor of the diesel engine, a major category of internal combustion engines. All he knew was Rudolph or something. Churchill, bar, cross it out. Quiuchugi, get out of here. Didier or Debord or diesel. After Carlo searched hard, He wrote these 3 names on a piece of paper. Let people go to Germany to see if there is such a person developing a new engine. After taking Carlo's note, the captain of the guard was a little confused. These are 3 names. One person uses 3 names. I didn't remember the name, so I can only do this for now. Facing the captain of the guard's doubts, Carlo concealed it with an embarrassed look. Okay, Your Majesty, I will arrange for someone to go to Germany to investigate. After leaving these words, the captain of the guard left, and this time he was not stopped again. In fact, Carlo didn't know that asking the captain of the guard to find the inventor of the diesel engine was destined to be a futile effort. Because Mr. Diesel is still in Paris, he has just resigned from his position as a refrigeration engineer and set up his own engine laboratory in Paris. This destined to be useless effort can only be blamed on Carlo, who has insufficient memory and only remembers that Diesel invented the diesel engine in Germany. Carlo, who knew nothing about it, felt much more relaxed after preparing to build an Italian internal combustion engine research and development center. Next, he still needs to be busy with other tasks. After all, as a diligent king, how can he leave work for others to complete? He was asking for it, but Carlo didn't mind it at all. It was just a bit tiring. The previous chapter was completed yesterday, but this chapter is from today. I will continue to work hard tomorrow and strive to save the manuscript and put it on the shelves. Chapter 120 National Power Laboratory. The Higher Institute of Technology in Milan, the predecessor of Politecnico di Milano, is a famous architecture, design and engineering school in Italy. Its founder, Mr. Francesco Briaschi, tried to spread science in the school, progress to gradually achieve political progress, as well as the concept of social development. That is why this college, founded in 1863, has its unique style, and is unique among Italian schools. Of course, unlike later generations, that enroll tens of thousands of students, current European universities generally only enroll a few hundred people, and the Politecnico di Milano, forget it. Just call it this name. The Institute of Advanced Technology does not look like the name of the school, although it is the name of the school, is based on the principle of striving for excellence, rather than seeking more. It enrolls only more than 200 students. Moreover, these 200 people are divided into 3 major categories: architecture, design and engineering. Each category has only a few dozen students. If calculated based on the entrance grade, there will not be more than 20 students in each grade. It can be said to be a standard elite education. Of course, if you want to enter this university, you cannot rely solely on your financial ability, because the principal, Mr. Briaschi, pays close attention to the quality of teaching. Not to mention sleeping in class. Even if you show a slight lack of seriousness, you will be severely criticized. In this era, there are no students who are not serious enough to be admitted to university. A bell rang, and Giovanni Serrano put down his textbook. Students, today's class ends here. If you want to continue to understand the structure of the internal combustion engine, you can contact me privately. In the next class, we will explain the working principle of the internal combustion engine. As Giovanni Serrano finished speaking, the classroom immediately became lively, calling for friends and exchanging learning experiences. Some were anxious and walked quickly. Of course, some people immediately came up to ask Giovanni Serrano if he was in class. After understanding the content, the classroom immediately became full of vitality. After explaining the problem to the students, Giovanni Serrano was finally able to clear his mind and have time to think about the internal combustion engine he was studying. Yes, Giovanni Serrano is not only a university professor, but also a senior researcher. The thing he studied was the internal combustion engine that he talked about in class. Since Otto invented the internal combustion engine in 1978, Giovanni Serrano has been following up on internal combustion engine research. He believed that this new type of machine, which was smaller and more powerful than a steam engine, could become the core of power in the new era. To this end, he cleaned up his warehouse and carried out research on internal combustion engines there. To this end, he also purchased an Otto internal combustion engine for disassembly and research. After so many years of research, Giovanni Serrano succeeded in building a 2.15 horsepower gasoline internal combustion engine. After building this internal combustion engine, Giovanni Serrano's pockets were already empty. Subsequent experiments on its reliability were also intermittent. In addition to taking classes, Giovanni Serrano's more important task now is to find a sponsor so that he can continue to conduct experiments. So after his lecture, Giovanni Serrano wondered where to find funding. Professor Serrano, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Giovanni Serrano looked up and saw a colleague calling him. Anything. The principal is waiting for you in the office. I have something to ask you. Serrano was a little surprised by the words brought by his colleagues. Maybe the principal had something important to do. Serrano, who did not dare to neglect, immediately rushed to the principal's office. President Braiaschi is a firm practitioner of technology changing society, so at Politecnico di Milano, he has always been committed to allowing teachers and students to dare to think and do in science and technology. Today, Braiaschi never expected that someone from the royal family would come to his door. Well, it was an attendant, and not a member of the royal family, but the person behind it made Braiaschi have to treat it with caution. Because behind them was His Majesty King Carlo, this was enough for him to pay attention to them. Boy, please taste our university's coffee. You must know that this is the most praised thing in our school. Braiaschi personally handed the coffee to the two waiting people and made a humorous joke to himself. Faced with the enthusiasm of the principal, how could the two attendants really accept it? Among other things, the principal Braiaschi was well known in the education world, not only in Italy, but also in Europe. Facing the coffee handed to him personally, the two attendants quickly stood up and took it. Your Excellency, President, you are welcome. Under your leadership, Politecnico di Milano is destined to become a top school in Italy. The chat between the host and the guest did not last long. After taking 2 sips of coffee, there was a knock on the door. Professor Serrano must be here. After Principal Braiaschi said this with a smile, he immediately became very angry. Please come in, Principal, you are looking for me. Before entering the door, Serrano asked, but when he came in, he saw 2 people inside with inquiring expressions. Let me introduce you. This is Professor Serrano from our school. He is also the most outstanding internal combustion engine expert in our university. At least as far as I know, there is no one better than him. Principal Braiaschi introduced Serrano as if he was selling goods, which made the professor a little embarrassed. Then the principal introduced the guests. These 2 are from Rome and are employees of the royal family. They want to talk to you about something. Hello, Professor Serrano. Hello. After seeing greetings from both sides, Principal Braiaschi continued. Okay, you have all met. Now the place is left for you to talk. After saying that, Principal Braiaschi left calmly and carefully closed the door before leaving. For a time, the lively people left, and the scene became dull. With some purpose in mind, the 2 royal attendants spoke first and introduced themselves. Hello, Professor Serrano. My name is Cattle, and my colleague's name is Mendy. We came here mainly because we heard that you are the most outstanding internal combustion engine expert in Italy, so we hope to get to know you. The words of the guest made Serrano interested. Do you 2 want to know about the internal combustion engine? The 2 attendants looked at each other and replied, yes. Then you need to know what kind of internal combustion engine. Currently, there are 2 main types of internal combustion engines on the market, gas and gasoline. They are divided into 3 types, large, medium and small according to size and power. In addition, they can be further subdivided according to actual uses. Facing Serrano's words, the 2 attendants looked at each other and continued. Then could you please explain something to us? No problem. As Serrano spoke, the 2 attendants felt a pang of regret, because the professional vocabulary spoken from this mouth made the knowledge they had learned about internal combustion engines completely useless, because this person's explanation was very detailed, which made the 2 people can only feel that they are back in school, and they are still the kind of poor students. Professor Serrano, okay, what you said is very exciting, and we admire it very much. After being tortured for an hour. Seeing that Professor Serrano felt like he could continue talking for another day, the two attendants immediately raised their hands and surrendered. Serrano, who was interrupted, immediately apologized when he saw the tortured expressions on their faces. "Sorry, I was talking about sex and didn't notice. It doesn't matter. The main reason we came here this time is to extend an invitation to you and request you to become a member of the Italian National Power Laboratory." Faced with this sudden invitation, Serrano was stunned. "Excuse me, where is the National Power Laboratory you are talking about?" Don't blame Serrano for being too straightforward, because a university professor like him knows all about the various laboratories he comes to, let alone the motivation for his own research. As for the National Power Laboratory that the two mentioned, he had never heard of it before. "Sorry, we forgot to mention it before. This National Power Laboratory is still under preparation, and you are the first batch of professionals we are looking for." The guard's explanation did not make Serrano look happy, because he didn't understand the specific conditions of this laboratory, so he couldn't say he was very happy. Seeing that Serrano was a little indifferent, the guard named Cada decided to give him an intuitive image. "Mirano Electrical Laboratory, you should know." "I know that. How could Serrano not know about this well-known laboratory in the scientific research community? Its wealth has made many people who are worried about funding look envious. In the future, the scale and funding of the National Power Laboratory will not be less than that of the Electric Power Laboratory." Cada's words made Serrano's eyes shine immediately. "No problem, it's a lifelong honor for me to work for the National Power Laboratory." "Who said people engaged in scientific research are rigid? Isn't this very clever?" Serrano is not the first person to boast a salary and funding. Before him, many scholar-level masters who studied internal combustion engines bowed to money's ability, and there is no shortage of famous figures. This also confirms the wise saying, "Money can make the world go round." And if you spend money quickly, you will naturally earn it quickly. Carlo knows this best. Chapter 121 Family Background. As the King of Italy, did Carlo know how much money he had? In other words, does Carlo know how much financial resources he can mobilize? I'm very responsible to tell you that Carlo himself does not know. Although he didn't know, he knew that there was one person who must know, and that was the palace steward, Mr. Alleged. It's pitiful to say that Carlo has been king for 5 or 6 years, but he doesn't even know how much the family property is. In fact, it is also his fault that he is not an adult. The treatment of adults and minors is very different. First of all, minors have guardians, and the person responsible for managing the family property is the mother, Queen Margherita. Although the family property can still be used, mother must be persuaded. Fortunately, my mother has not interfered with his need for funds in the past few years. Even if it is such a large sum of money, to build 2 Venice-class cruise ships for the Navy, as long as Carlo explains the reason, he will still support it. When he reaches adulthood, the custody of property naturally falls on him. Some time ago, Carlo was busy with government affairs, and had no time to check the family property. Now that he has free time, Carlo certainly needs to take care of it. After all, this is related to his ability to make money. His Majesty, let's start. Alleged, as the general manager, held a thick account book in his hand and began to introduce the current royal family's property to Carlo. The royal family currently has 37.14 million lire in cash and marketable bonds. Of this, 20 million lire is the third tranche that needs to be invested in the state grid company next week, and the second tranche of 10 million lire from the Ministry of Industry has not yet been made. I sent someone to urge you to invest, and Mr. Stam has already said that arrangements must be in place before this Friday. The 10 million lire is used as the startup capital for the power laboratory in Milan. The location of the project has been planned and is waiting for payment. Construction can begin. There are still 2.4 million lire to be paid to the royal family members this month, including 350,000 lire to Queen Mother Margherita, 150,000 lire to Prince Vittorio, Yolanda and Maffel, 240,000 lire for the 2 princesses, 300,000 lire for the Duke of Genoa, 300,000 lire for the Duke of Aosta, and, in Alleged's words, the annuities of the royal family members are all vivid in his mind. From this, it can be seen that the annuity of the Italian royal family is not bad. Although it is not too high, it is at least very comfortable. Point of course, 30 million lire from the government alone is definitely not enough for the royal family, because the annuity provided by the royal family to its members exceeds 28 million, not to mention other expenses, such as royal travel and the cost of many personnel serving it. In addition, the maintenance expenses of royal estates in various places are also large. You must know that Italy was in a state of fragmentation before, and there are many ancient buildings left from ancient times to the present. I don't know what the royal family thought when they were unified, but they kept all the essence in their pockets. This has also led to the fact that there are many ancient buildings under the name of the Italian royal family, each with a wonderful history. This has also led to the royal family's high maintenance costs. The annual maintenance costs of these ancient buildings alone reach tens of millions of lire. The current annual expenditure of the royal family has reached more than 50 million lire, which is also very staggering. You must know that the Savoy family is not very prosperous, but its expenses are so huge. If it were replaced by the prosperous Habsburg family, or Germany, the royal family is not particularly prosperous, but it has a prominent Grand Duke, or the prince has too many families, and his expenses in this area are even greater. Therefore, starting from the first generation of Italian King Victor Emmanuel II, the royal family has tried to expand its family industry, so that its family industry can catch up with the royal family's expenses. After years of hard work, especially after Carlo came to power, this goal has been basically achieved. Although Carlo failed to control the power in the past few years, he did have a lot of involvement in the family business. Apart from anything else, he still knows which ones are popular for future generations. So under his guidance, the royal family's industry has grown well, and the annual income can basically reach over 50 million, which is enough to ensure a balance of payments. Otherwise, how would he dare to directly propose building warships for the navy? Although this is to win over the navy, at least he must make the people in charge of the money willing to pay for it. Carlo, who now had a different identity, did not interrupt what Chief Alleged was saying, and continued to listen to his story. After talking about expenses, Alleged talked about income. Your Majesty, the family's current investment income is not small. Its foreign investment companies and financial market operations allow it to achieve an annual income of 10 to 15 million lire. After talking about foreign investments, Alleged continued. As for domestically, the family's investment income in various places in Italy reached 26 to 28 million lire. In addition, in the agricultural and animal husbandry industry, the family probably did not receive 6.5 million lire. In addition, the income from the rental and sale of real estate, nursing homes, and the sale of various royal souvenirs, and can also provide the family with an income of about 5 million lire every year. Of course, I have not included the scientific research projects that His Majesty has funded and invested in the past few years, but according to my estimates, the income will be very amazing. Alleged said at the end, giving Carlo a small compliment. If Alleged, who is like an old fox, can boast, Carlo has enough reasons to be proud. This is a joke. If knowing the direction of history and understanding what makes money would not allow the family to grow, Carlo could hang himself because he was too embarrassed and lost the pride of a time traveler. Mr. Alleged, thank you for your contribution to the family. The family business has continued to grow because of your management over the years. Faced with Carlo's sudden thanks, how could a steward really accept it? Your Majesty, you're welcome. This is what I should do. Facing Alleged's politeness, Carlo didn't want to get too entangled because he had a more important question that needed to be answered by the steward. Mr. Alleged, can you help me calculate how valuable the agriculture and animal husbandry currently controlled by the royal family is? Your Majesty, please wait a moment. Faced with Carlo's inquiry, Alleged immediately rummaged through the documents. After answering, found it. Looking at the numbers on the document, Director Alleged reported truthfully. Your Majesty, the agriculture and animal husbandry currently controlled by the family is mainly distributed in Turin, Milan and Sardinia. We also have a lot in Sicily, Naples, and Rome. the total value should be 8.7-9.1 of lire. Of course there is no way to give a specific figure. I can only give a rough estimate, facing the figures given by director Allegend. Carlo made up his mind. What do you think about getting rid of these agricultural and animal husbandry industries? The steamed buns are planned to be put on the shelves during the National Day. I hope everyone can give the steamed buns more support. Subscribe to make the steamed bun data look better. Chapter 122 done. Faced with Carlo's shocking words, even the calm manager Allegend showed a pale expression. Your Majesty, are you sure? It's not surprising that Allegend asked this, because although it is not uncommon in Europe to want to sell land and property, most of them encounter difficulties and are forced to sell. Actively selling land is very rare among nobles. Moreover, a monarch like Carlo who wanted to sell land on a large scale without financial difficulties was unique. It's no wonder that Allegend asked this question. Of course, there was another meaning in his words. Of course Carlo understood what director Allegend said. Selling land was a big deal. Although Carlo is the patriarch of the Savoy family, he cannot decide such a major matter alone. Although Carlo is the king, the opinions of other royal members also need to be considered. I haven't told anyone else about this idea yet, but the land returns are too low, and it's not in the economic interest to leave a lot of money on the land. Carlo said the reason for his consideration, but of course he didn't say a word. Italy's ongoing industrialization will lead to the growth of the bourgeoisie, and the kingdom's governing base will change from civilians nobles king to civilians capitalists king. Although this time may vary, depending on the speed of industrialization, it cannot change this fact. And when the bourgeoisie grows stronger, what should the Savoy family, as the Italian royal family, do? You must know that the characteristics of the bourgeoisie determine that they are not interested in royal power. Therefore, Carlo needs to keep the bourgeoisie under his control or influence from the beginning, which requires enough funds. According to Carlo's estimate, at least 1 billion lire is needed to have an effect. Note that it is only effective. Although the Savoy family is rich, if they want to get 1 billion lire out, they will basically have to spend more than half of their family property. In this case, if you don't sell the land and property with the lowest return, what else can you sell? It's just that Carlo underestimated the aristocrats' attachment to land in this era. No, this is absolutely not okay. In the evening, when Carlo expressed his thoughts, his mother, Queen Mother Margherita, changed her previous attitude of unlimited support and immediately expressed her serious opposition. Faced with a mother who looked like "I don't want to hear your explanation." Although Carlo had considered being rejected before, he didn't expect to be so determined. However, no matter how determined Carlo was, he still had to convince his mother, otherwise he would not be able to convince other royal members in the future. Mother, I know you have different opinions on selling land, but you must also take into account the current family situation. Although we don't need to worry about funds at the moment, you have also seen that the output of the land plays a large role in the royal family's operations. The proportion is getting lower and lower. Leng Budding's mother suddenly said something. But this is better than stability. Naturally, Carlo couldn't say the opposite to his mother's words. Yes, the output of this land is better than stability. However, although the land owned by our family is not bad, the output is too low. So, what? At least it can add 6.5 million liras to us every year. It seems that my mother also has a clear understanding of the profitability of the royal family industry. In this case, Carlo could only use another method. Yes, mother is right. As long as there are no natural or man-made disasters, the land will always be profitable. But now my son needs a lot of money. Currently, only land in the family industry can meet my needs. What do you need? You want to sell the land? My mother immediately asked why Carlo needed such a huge amount of money, which attracted her interest. Facing his mother's question, Carlo breathed a sigh of relief. He then expressed his concerns about the growing domestic bourgeoisie. No way. Those factory owners and businessmen dare to make such excessive demands. Aren't they afraid of military suppression? Well, facing his mother whose thoughts were still in the 18th century, Carlo continued to explain earnestly that if Italy wanted to be strong, it must rely on the bourgeoisie, and the government could not ignore their demands. Isn't This similar to the Huguenot religion in France? Well, my mother finally found an unreliable prototype from history. Carlo also recognized it, so he followed these words and said, "But these people are more difficult to deal with than the Huguenots. They are also much more difficult to deal with, but it is not impossible to control them. What is your job?" The weakness of these bourgeoisie is also obvious. Their weakness is money. Although I don't agree with Marx's crooked ideas in Capital, there is one sentence he said is right. As long as they want enough profits, capitalists can sell and hang themselves of rope. Carlo's words silenced the mother. It seemed that she was convinced by her son's words. Then, other nobles can join in, which can also share some financial pressure on the royal family. Carlo was furious at his mother's words. After all, he still needed some land left. "Mother, the fewer people who know about this kind of thing, the better. Otherwise we will be very passive. You must know that we are still the loyal leaders of the nobles." Her son's words made Queen Mother Margherita feel that she had made a bad idea point as a remedy. Queen Mother Margherita couldn't help but say, "But it's not enough just for me to agree. It also needs the approval of other members of the family. That's all I need from you." Faced with his mother's words, Carlo took it up without hesitation. "As long as you agree, mother, then the matter is half done. As long as you support me, I have confidence." Faced with Carlo's assurance, Queen Mother Margherita was a little doubtful. But after all, blood is thicker than water. If you don't trust your own son, who can you trust? So under Carlo's explanation, Queen Mother Margherita reluctantly agreed. For Carlo, convincing his mother was half the battle. How many people can the royal family currently have? Uncle Amedia is easy to deal with. As long as this playboy increases his annuity, he will be on paragraph. As for the troublesome thing, he is his great uncle, the Duke of Genoa, so the relationship is far away. Although this one is the eldest member of the family. But as long as the uncle can agree, then the great uncle can't stand alone. Then Carlo's next target was his uncle, who was far away in Turin. After finding an excuse, Carlo rushed to Turin to meet his uncle in person. The result was not what he expected. After Carlo promised to privately increase his annuity from 350,000 to 450,000 lire per month, the playboy stopped talking about what his ancestors had fought for in a bloody battle. As for his brother, who is about to become an adult, and his two sisters, they will be represented by Carlo. With most support secured, Carlo convened a council of the House of Savoy. At the meeting, Carlo proposed a plan to sell the land in exchange for funds to invest in industry. As expected, the great uncle objected, but after seeing that others supported Carlo's plan, the old great uncle was very sensible and no longer objected. So Carlo's idea can finally be realized. Of course, Carlo is not in a hurry to sell the land. After all, there is still some gold in the temple, so there is no rush yet. Carlo gave Stuart Alleged 4 years to gradually sell at least 80% of the land in the hands of the royal family. The proceeds from these sales will gradually be invested in Italian industrialization. Of course, you have to believe that Carlo's investment will not suffer any loss. After all, he knows the general trend of history. Unlike Romania, the Italian bourgeoisie has already developed, so if it wants to take control, it needs more funds. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Adjutant. It feels so good to finally be home, Captain. Leifa, no, Major, set foot on the Italian soil. He took a deep breath of the sea-smelling air and sighed with satisfaction. Paul, I think you were very well off in the Qing dynasty. Why do you still have such an expression when you return to China, Major? Gomes also took a deep breath and couldn't help but joke about Leifa. Faced with the teasing of his colleague Major Gomes, Leifa showed a helpless smile. The reason has to start with himself. Because of his performance in the Sino-French War, Li Zongtang particularly appreciated him. For this reason, he once wanted to invite him to become a member of the Biang Fleet Advisor, but he refused. Although he was rejected, Li Zongtang was not angry because of it. he still took good care of Leffel and other Italian naval officers and soldiers, and also arranged for someone to take care of their daily life. I don't know how they considered it. The person assigned to take care of Gomes was a man, while Liefers was a woman, a young woman. Well, this kind of differential treatment is a bit embarrassing, and Liefer was laughed at by Gomes several times for this. Now that he was used to it, he turned to Gomes and asked, "What do you think will happen when the Admiral summons us this time?" Faced with Liefer's inquiry, Gomes put away his smile. "I don't know about this, but I believe it won't be a bad thing." Gomez's words made Liefer furious. "Isn't this nonsense? They have been in the Far East for more than a year and have experienced so much suffering. So they are meritorious people. How could they be reprimanded just after returning home?" Seeing Liefer's face, Gomes knew what he said was wrong. "Well, actually I don't know anything. I need to meet His Excellency the Admiral to find out." As soon as he finished speaking, Gomes pointed to a carriage outside the dock and said, "Look, the carriage to pick us up has arrived." As soon as he finished speaking, Gomes hurried over with his luggage. Liefer shook his head helplessly and rushed over with his luggage. "Hello, Majors. I'm responsible for receiving Second Lieutenant Piri." The man from the Admiralty who greeted them introduced himself. "Hello, Lieutenant Piri." "Hello." After a brief greeting, the two of them put away their luggage with the help of Second Lieutenant Piri, boarded the carriage, and left the port of Antium. Both of them were summoned and arranged to attend at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Lieutenant Piri, who was sitting on the carriage, introduced the time of the interview to Liefer and Gomes. Neither of them had anything to say about the time of the interview. After all, Admiral Gorek had many things to do, and it would be very quick to meet them tomorrow morning. For many officers at the rank of Colonel or Major General, it is normal for them to wait 2 or 3 days. After all, they are not King Carlo, so they can see the Minister of the Navy whenever they want. Seeing that the two majors were silent, Lieutenant Piri continued to ask, "The place where you two live has been prepared. Do you want to take a rest first, or what?" "Let's go to the resting place first." Gomes speaks his mind. Then, let's go to the resting place first. Since his colleague wanted to take a rest first, it was naturally hard for Liefer to refute, and he also said to take a rest first. After receiving the reply, Lieutenant Piri gave instructions to the carriage in front. "Let's go to the Polka Inn." "Okay." After the coachman replied, he raised his whip to speed up the carriage. After a 2-hour journey, the carriage finally arrived at the Polka Inn. This is the main reception place for our Admiralty. Generally, visitors to the Admiralty will be arranged here. The hotel is not too far from the Admiralty, and it is not far from the Roman Madam Club. Facing Pillar's hint, the two majors failed to understand the meaning, which made him roll his eyes inwardly. In addition, he didn't say anything. This hotel is generally provided to officers of colonel and above. You are lucky enough to be able to live here. After that, the second lieutenant took the two people to the front desk, opened 2 rooms, and handed them the keys. "Goodbye, you two. I have other things to be busy with. Goodbye." After Lieutenant Piri left, Gomes spoke. "I don't like this Lieutenant Piri." Faced with Gomes, Liefer agreed. "I don't like him either. We still have half a day. Where do you plan to go?" Facing Gomez's question, Liefer thought for a while and then spoke. "I'm going to visit some friends." "What about you?" "I want to move around, have a good time then." Then, the two of them set off towards their destinations. Although the two of them were busy with their own affairs, they both remembered that they were still waiting for the Admiral to receive them tomorrow, so they returned to the hotel around 10 o'clock. Early the next morning, both of them got up early at the same time. Although the Admiral would not receive them until 10 o'clock, there was no harm in getting up early, arranging clothes, wiping leather shoes, cleaning myself, busy with various things for more than an hour. It wasn't until 8:30 that the two of them were done. When they walked out of the door, their handsome and upright military demeanor made the two of them eye-catching even in the hotel. The main reason is that the two of them are too young, only in their 20s, and they are inconspicuous in their military uniforms. This time there was no carriage to pick them up, so they chose to walk to the Admiralty. Waiting for more than an hour was nothing to the two of them, so when the Admiral's secretary called them, they answered immediately. "You 2. The Admiral is waiting for you inside. As the secretary opened the door, Leifa and Gomes appeared in front of Admiral Gorek. Wait a moment for me to sign this document, Admiral. Gorek, without raising his head, continued to process the documents in his hand. After giving instructions faced with the Admiral's words, the two people immediately stood quietly in front of him, and no one wanted to say a word. After a few minutes, the document was finally processed. Admiral Gorek looked up and saw that the two were still standing, and immediately pointed to the stool behind them with a smile. You guys sit down first. After receiving the order, the two people sat down and looked like they were listening. Do you know why I summoned you? Facing Admiral Gorek's inquiry, the two of them shook their heads in unison. Seeing the actions of the two men, His Excellency the Navy Minister smiled slightly. Since you don't know, I'll tell you. Major Gomes, arrive. Gomes, who was called, immediately stood up with a snap like a spring. Congratulations on being appointed as the captain of the Venice Outfitting Patrol. I hope you will continue your efforts and achieve even more outstanding results. Hearing Admiral Gorek's words, Gomes looked happy. For this trip to the Navy, both he and Leifa had considered that it might be necessary to arrange positions for them, and the two people with actual combat experience in uniformed patrols finally decided the only hope is to become the captain of the new Venetian cruise ship. However, considering that currently only one Venetian improved class ship has been launched in Italy, the other one is Argentina's May 12th. Then this position will definitely require some competition. Gomes did not expect that this position would eventually belong to him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glance at Leifa beside him from the corner of his eyes, feeling much relieved inside. Although the two are friends, Gomes has to admit that Leifa performed better in the Far East. He thought that this position would most likely be taken away by Leifa, but he didn't expect that it would be him in the end. Admiral, please rest assured, I will definitely lead the Venice to create even more outstanding results. Facing Gomes, who expressed his stance, Admiral Gorek said with a smile, very good, that's what I like about you. Seeing that his friend had captured the captain of the Venice, it was impossible for Leifa not to be disappointed. Both of them had led armored patrols in naval battles, and their performance was even better. Leifa believed that this captain position should most likely belong to him. Now that it was given to a friend, what should he do if he changed it? Leifa's somewhat dazed expression did not escape Admiral Gorek's eyes. Gomez, please wait outside first. Although it was a bit strange for the general to leave Leifa alone, the characteristics of a soldier made Gomes answer without hesitation. As you command, Your Excellency. After Gomes went out, Admiral Gorek looked at Leifa and suddenly asked, do you have anything to do with His Majesty? He didn't expect the Admiral to ask such a strange question. After being surprised for a while, Leifa answered truthfully, I've only met His Majesty a few times, but we don't have anything to do with him. After hearing Leifa's words, Admiral Gorek said something incomprehensible. It's pretty much what I thought. Leifa, who was a little confused by the Admiral's words, didn't know how to answer. Do you know why I asked Gomes to be the captain of the Venetia? Have no idea. Then I'm telling you, because you have a better place to be. Faced with the mysterious words spoken by Admiral Gorek, Leifa really didn't know how to answer. What do you think of the position of King's Adjutant, Admiral? Gorek's words made Leifa's eyes widen. Of course he knew the position of the King's Adjutant. This is the link between the King and the army. The person who can hold this position must be the King's most trusted officer. This alone is not attractive enough. There is another very important reason. As long as the person who serves as adjutant is destined to be one of the military bosses in the future, even if he does not want to develop in the military in the future, he cannot be underestimated in the political world. Giving himself such an important position makes Leifa feel very unreal. I will be the King's lieutenant. Yes, that's you, Major Leifa. Receiving the confirmed words from Admiral Gorek made Leifa feel even more confused. He almost couldn't even remember how he got out of the office. Leifa, what's wrong with you? The voice of his friend Gomes came to his ears. He looked at Leifa, who looked in a daze, and asked worriedly, nothing. Don't be like this, Leifa. I knew I took your place. I really didn't know it would be like this. Gomez's words of self-blame made Leafa shake his head. It's okay. I'm fine. Really fine. Then, what's wrong with you? I was stunned by the news. What? News? I'm going to serve as your majesty's adjutant. This is not a blow. There is plenty in the future. What did you say? Gomes looked at his friend in surprise like a rooster being strangled. And Leafa said it again. I want to be your majesty's adjutant. Chapter 124. The first day, thanks to Cheyenne Row's affectionate leader. The sun is shining, and the weather is bright, which is a good weather for traveling. So there are many people traveling on the street. Leafa sat on the carriage meticulously like a statue. Today was his first day as an adjutant to the king. With such great pressure, he couldn't help but be nervous. He might as well act like a soldier and let His Majesty the King see his Leafa military qualities, but it didn't take long for him to break through. Here we are, Lieutenant Leafa. Oh. After getting off the car, Leafa looked at the majestic Quirinal Palace and felt guilty. Fortunately, the guards waiting for him eased his mood. Is this Major Leafa? Yes, it's me. Faced with the inquiry from the guard at the door, Leafa straightened his clothes and immediately stepped forward. Seeing Leafa walking forward, the guard looked at him and asked again, "Are you Major Paul Tondi Leafa?" Faced with the guard's inquiry, Leafa smiled slightly. If there's no one else by that name, it should be me. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. After the guard apologized, he continued, "Please come with me. Your Majesty the captain of the guard is waiting for you. Lead the way." Under the leadership of the guards, Leafa followed through numerous guards and met the captain of the guards, Baron Filimaki, in the palace hall. "Hello, Lieutenant Leafa." "Hello, Your Excellency Baron." After the two briefly exchanged greetings, Filimaki said immediately, "Your Majesty has already told me. Now let me show you around the palace." "Thank you, Captain of the Guard, for leading the way." Leafa was very grateful to the captain of the guard for personally leading the way, although Leafa had not cared about Roman politics at all before. After receiving the news that he would become an adjutant, he immediately asked his friends in Rome about the king's preferences and the situation in the political arena. Of course, during this period, Leafa would not say that he would become the king's adjutant, but would inquire about it for other reasons. Faced with Leafa's inquiry, friends in Rome were very curious, because Leafa's image has always been that he only focuses on the military or the navy. So why is he interested in asking about this news? Now that this friend who only cares about the military has figured it out, I will generously share this information with him. From the mouths of friends, the situation about King Carlo was constantly told. From being ignored by his ministers at the beginning, to fighting to regain some of his rights, and then gradually gaining power, the young king's struggle could fill a novel. Of course, no matter which friend you say, you have to admit that this king has a very precise vision. In the war between France and the king people, no one could have imagined that France would lose. Although the French were nominally better, in fact no one knew about France's disastrous defeat in the Far East. Then he snatched food from the tiger's mouth and suddenly snatched a Dutch colony in Southeast Asia, without giving the Dutch a chance to resist. This also proves Carlo's precise vision. Not everyone can do it. By taking the Lanfang colony by surprise and unprepared the Dutch. Of course, when talking about the king, his captain of the bodyguard, Baron Filimaki, will inevitably be brought along. Being able to serve as the captain of the bodyguard for two kings, and also serving as the captain of the bodyguard after the assassination of the previous king Umberto I, Baron Filimaki is definitely not simple. As for the prime minister and the ministers, my friends also shared some of what they knew, giving Leafa a general understanding. With this information, Leafa certainly did not dare to underestimate the captain of the guard in front of him, and listen to him introducing the situation of the palace to him along the way. This is the inner garden. In the evening, the two princesses like to go out and play. If there is nothing important, it is best not to come here at this time. This is the monkey garden. The queen mother likes to take guests here and have afternoon tea in the afternoon, so try to avoid coming here in the afternoon. In the library here, Prince Vittorio likes to read here in the morning. If you want to read, please keep the sound as low as possible. This is your bedroom. The bed has been made If you don't like it, you can bring your own bedding. By the way, here is your key. In a clean room, where various items had been prepared, the captain of the guard took out the room key and handed it to him. Thank you, Captain. I like it very much. I don't need to change the bedding anymore. Faced with the words of the captain of the guard, Lifa quickly expressed his gratitude. Okay, I will take you to meet His Majesty later. Your Majesty is currently summoning the Minister of Finance, His Excellency Tedula. It's okay, I'll just wait. Lifa kept his posture very low, like a new recruit who had just entered the military camp, doing whatever he was told. Of course, this is also related to one's own environment. Anyone who suddenly becomes the king's adjutant from an ordinary major will do the same. Not long after, Finance Minister Tedula walked out of the king's office with his head lowered. Seeing the powerful Minister of Finance, the captain of the guard and Lifa both stood up in unison. Your Excellency Tedula, do you want to go out now? The greeting from the captain of the guard made Tedula raise her head. It turns out to be His Excellency the Baron. It's me who wants to go back to the Ministry of Finance now. Speaking of this, Tedula looked at Lifa, who was standing aside. Hello, Lord Tedula. My name is Lifa. Hello, Mr. Lifa. Facing Lifa's self-introduction, Tedula looked at him thoughtfully. It seems that it won't be long before these old foxes in the political world will know him. After the finances were settled and they were gone, the captain of the guard said to Lifa, wait here for a moment. I want His Majesty to inform you. Thanks. After being informed by the captain of the guard, Lifa finally got the opportunity to meet King Carlo alone for the first time. I have met His Majesty. Looking at Lifa, who was standing respectfully in front of him, Carlo smiled and said, do you have many questions to ask me? When His Majesty expressed his feelings, Lifa did not deny it. Yes, Your Majesty. Okay, I allow you to ask a question. Facing the king's sudden words, Lifa felt so sudden. Is it true? As soon as he said these words, Lifa really wanted to slap himself twice. How can you ask a king like this? It's like a 3-year-old child can talk like this. But Carlo didn't care about this. It is true. Although Lifa had many questions to ask, he decided at that time to ask the question he cared about most. If he didn't know the answer to this question, he would not feel safe sleeping. Your Majesty, I would like to ask, why did you choose me? I knew you would ask that. After listening to Lifa's question, Carlo reconsidered in his mind and gave an explanation. Because of my intuition, I felt that you were very capable. You proved this in the Far East naval battle. So when I needed to choose an adjutant, I thought of you. Well, Carlo's answer made Lifa a little dumbfounded. He guessed for a long time that it was because of a close eye. Of course, the naval battle in the Far East also gave him a lot of points. Faced with the explanation given by Carlo, although Lifa still had some doubts, he still agreed with it. After all, this is what the king himself said, which is more reliable than random guesses from outside. Carlo then asked Lifa some more questions, and he also answered them, and the first meeting between the two ended like this. Carlo looked at Lifa leaving and sighed. Well, only half of the explanation given to Lifa just now is true. That is, Lifa performed well in the Far East. But this was not the reason why Carlo chose him to be his adjutant. The bigger reason was that Carlo wanted to deepen his connection with the Navy. In the absence of a suitable candidate, Lifa, who performed well, became his choice point. If you can't find a loyal lieutenant, you can just choose one with good abilities. As for why Carlo didn't choose an army officer to be his adjutant, it goes without saying. But no matter what, Lifa, the lucky man, became the king's adjutant. At least this was a new world for him, because he could obtain enough information on the latest situations in the Navy and Army. While Carlo was working hard for Italy, a battle was raging far away in Somalia, East Africa. There are still 2 chapters left. Book lovers who are willing to wait can wait patiently, and thank His Majesty the Sultan. I need to update 10 chapters in the 3 days, before it is put on the shelves. Chapter 125 Darlo Conflict. Additional update for Cheyenne OW Yaoking. Darlo is located in the upper reaches of the Juba River, where the Dora River, which originates from the Ethiopian plateau, intersects with the Ghana Lidoria River. The intersection of the two rivers makes this place fairly good in terms of water and soil, so the Saha who live here, the Bu tribe, a small Somali tribe, cultivates the small flat land in the river valley and still has a considerable harvest point, since this place is not bad. Then of course, as the commander of the Italian expeditionary force, Colonel Crowley would not let such a place go. Not only did he take the main force of the expeditionary force, 1,500 people, to occupy Darlo Point, but he didn't know that his move to occupy Douro made Vanis Vasquez, Duke of Alaba, feel threatened. This ruler ruled most of the Bakhul region, now most of Ethiopia's Somali province. Although he remained neutral during the Abyssinian Civil War, in the face of the Italian invasion, the Duke lost his good temper after sending an envoy to demand Italy's withdrawal from Darlo, but being rejected, the Duke of Alaba took most of his troops along the Canale Doria Valley and pressed on Darlo Point. How many troops did the Duke of Alaba bring? Its direct troops are 21,000. Equipped with some front-loading guns and a small number of breech-loading guns, the tribe mobilized 24,000 troops, mainly bows, arrows, javelins and spears, as well as a small number of muzzleloaders. These 45,000 troops are not a small number for the Italian army stationed in Darlo. Colonel Crowley, who served as the commander for this reason, had many times thought of withdrawing from Douro to avoid his sharp edge. However, considering the impact this would have on my career future, I held back. However, although he temporarily resisted the idea of retreating, Colonel Crowley did not intend to rely on this small force to block the incoming enemy. He sent 3 waves of messengers in succession, asking Luga, Garbaha, Bulbor and others to be in the rear. The Italian garrison in the area mobilized troops to support Darlo Point. Speaking of which, it was his negligence. Since he had been successful in the past and had always faced small tribes, the expedition force he led gradually reduced from 3,500 people at the beginning to 1,500 people. After all, such a large place requires troops to be stationed to declare sovereignty. Put 200 in this place and 300 in that place, and the number of the army will naturally be much smaller. In addition, they were invaders, and Duke Alaba was a local snake, so when the spies reported the enemy's attack, Duke Alaba's army was already less than 150 kilometers away from them. This is less than a week away. At this time, Colonel Crowley could only get support from the nearest Luga garrison. Its commander, Captain Cooney, transferred 100 men from his own 200 men for emergency support. Faced with such meager support, Colonel Crowley also knew that the captain had tried his best. He must know that Luga was his escape route. If someone cut him off, he would have nowhere to run. After all, there is desert everywhere, and except for the Juba Valley, where we can march, there is no water source anywhere else. You sure the enemy has arrived at Riola? Yes, sir, I can confirm that the enemy has arrived at Leva. There are huge crowds of people there. All of them are the troops of Vanis Vasquez, the Duke of Alaba. The person being questioned by Colonel Crowley was Mensah. The most successful businessman in Kismayo was now using his advantage to become Colonel Crowley's intelligence spy. He recruited several locals under him, all of whom were familiar with the local terrain, so they could provide intelligence to Colonel Crowley. And the Riava in his mouth is the intersection of a small river called Weeb, 20 kilometers away from Douro, and the Canale Doria River. Okay, thank you for the information. It's very important to us. After dismissing Mensah with a few words, Colonel Crowley called for the orderly. Call Major Tovani here. I have something to talk to him about. We will not mention the conversation between the 2 Italian officers. The next day, Darlo's Italian army was already well prepared, because a large number of troops appeared in front of them. Although half of these black indigenous troops were armed with cold weapons, the other half were armed with muzzle-loading guns and a small number of breech-loading guns produced in Europe. There were even natives pushing 6 front-loaded bronze cannons. The style was definitely Napoleon cannon. 2 were 6-pounder cannons, and 4 were 12-pounder cannons. Colonel Crowley put down the telescope. His face turned ugly. Damn it, these British people are so shameless. There are other church people who dare to give anything, just for the sake of proselytizing. Well, Colonel Crowley was right. The 2 6-pound cannons were bought by the Catholic Church, who were eager to preach, and were given to the Duke of Alaba. The remaining 4 12-pound cannons were bought by the Duke from the British. bought. As for the muskets, a small half were gifted by the British, most of which were purchased by the Duke, and some of them were purchased from Italian merchants. But now facing such a situation, fortunately, the Italian army also has artillery on its position. 12 breech-loading rifled cannons are enough to let the Duke of Alaba know that he cannot take advantage of the artillery point throughout the morning. The Italian army watched the Duke's troops arrive at the gates of Darlo. As the saying goes, if there are more than 10,000 people, there is no limit. This army of nearly 50,000 must put a lot of pressure on the 1,600 soldiers stationed there. The enemy's attitude of attracting and refusing to respond put double the pressure on every Italian officer and soldier. Fortunately, in the afternoon, these indigenous troops finally took action. About 3,000 indigenous black people armed with cold weapons came towards Darlo City Point when the enemy was still 300 meters away from the position. Colonel Crowley, who was responsible for commanding the battle, immediately issued an order. Fire! The Italian soldiers immediately used the Vitry M1870 rifles in their hands to let these indigenous people armed with cold weapons know what modern warfare is. Bang, bang, bang. After a burst of gunfire, nearly 100 natives fell on the land. Of course, the natives were not without the ability to fight back. After being hit by 3 waves of Italian fire, they had already rushed to a distance of 100 meters. At this time, the musketeers hidden behind immediately took the mini muzzleloader and rushed to the front row to fire. Afterwards, several Italian soldiers were shot. This lets the soldiers in the position know that the other party also has weapons that can threaten them. However, the indigenous soldiers who fired this round of volleys suffered greater losses. Their upright posture became a good target, and half of them fell in front of the Italian position. Of course, it was unrealistic for 3,000 people to capture the Italian army's entrenched Darlo. After a short while, they were defeated and left behind hundreds of corpses, and the attack was considered over. Of course, the commanders of both sides knew that this was just a test, so no one took the offensive seriously. Subsequently, the Duke of Alaba launched several probing attacks, but Colonel Crowley blocked them one by one. Perhaps considering that his army had just arrived, the indigenous army did not attack again. Instead, they began to set up camp and prepare for a long battle. Faced with the opponent's actions, Colonel Crowley was very happy to see it. This at least gave him one more day to wait for reinforcement. Neither side made any move to harass them at night, but Colonel Crowley still did not dare to neglect leaving nearly a battalion of troops to guard the area at night. By the next day, Duke Alaba's troops appeared on 3 sides of Darlo. This made Colonel Crowley's face heavy because it meant that the enemy was about to launch a general attack. It seemed that his move to set up camp yesterday afternoon was just to confuse himself, and the enemy was even more stupid and did not want to give him any time to delay. However, he is not a vegetarian. He dares to defend Darlo with more than 1,000 troops and block the enemy's nearly 50,000 troops. He also has his own trump card: push up those 6 Maxims. Yes, as the Terminator of Zenon Pass, this machine gun purchased by Italy also appeared in Somalia, a primitive place in Africa. Regarding the use of machine guns, the Italian army has already explored crossfire shooting, so there is no need to worry about its use. The only thing that worries him is that his machine gun carries a total of 250,000 rounds of ammunition. He doesn't know if it can last until the enemy collapses without letting him wait any longer. Duke Alaba's army launched an offensive from 3 sides, each army of tens of thousands of people charged with great momentum. Compared with the hundreds of Italian officers and soldiers stationed in the position, they were like a huge wave against a stubborn rock. A single wave could submerge them. At this time, the position commander no longer cared about the optimal shooting range. After entering the effective shooting range, he immediately ordered to fire. Bursts of gunfire knocked down the charging indigenous soldiers, but others still bravely continued to charge towards the position. Machine gunfire. Seeing that the enemy was not afraid of firepower, the position commander immediately brought out the killer weapon. Dalava. Obviously different sound of continuous shooting finally calmed down the heroic Ethiopian soldiers. Entire swaths of soldiers fell, fear finally arose in their hearts, and their offensive was halted. Seeing that the offensive was blocked, and his soldiers fell one after another, Duke Alaba's heart was bleeding. because the troops taking the lead are all his soldiers. In order to avoid Italian reinforcement and be able to attack Darlo in one go, he deployed his troops in this way. Unexpectedly, the enemy actually has such a continuous fire weapon. Its super high rate of fire makes it impossible for the warriors to rush forward. Return it all. Return it all. His order was issued a little late, causing at least 5,000 soldiers to fall in front of the Italian army's positions. After counting the losses, he found such casualties unacceptable. He could bear such a huge loss without even touching the enemy point, and these are all his elite troops. How can they not make people feel distressed? This is his capital related to his status, and he must not lose it all here point. But he would never be willing to retreat like this. Not to mention losing troops and generals. Such a big move of mobilizing troops, and mobilizing troops must have some results. Otherwise your rule will be unstable in the future point. So, after resting for a while, he was unwilling to choose to test attacks one after another. He would never dare to use such a large scale group charge again point, since it is a small scale battle. It is not easier to deal with equipment that far exceeds that of the opponent. There is only a huge gap in military strength. Now that the enemy has given up its advantage, it is even more impossible to use short attacks to reach long range point. Therefore, all the subsequent night attacks, harassments, sneak attacks and other means were used by the Duke. From this aspect, the Duke of Alaba was also a battle-hardened person. But these are all battles with other people in the country, battles with the modern army, and it seems that he has not experienced much yet. Point after 4 days, the Duke had nothing to do with Doro's defenders. He only added more than 2,000 kills to Colonel Crowley. Point on the 5th day, the Duke left in despair with his army. Because if I don't leave, another defeat might happen. Point. Because his spies came to report that an Italian army was on the way, and the number should be about 1,200. The spies' report made Duke Alaba want to ambush him, but considering that, if this army also had that kind of continuous fire weapon, it might lead to a defeat. Point after careful consideration, the Duke decided to be cautious. In fact, he did not need to be so, because the supporting Italian army only carried 2 Maxims. As long as the Duke ambushed enough people, it would be enough to break through the blockade. It is said that Maxim could not fire like a rifle at will, but he did not know this. Point the conflict in Darlo was not an isolated case. When Italy conquered the Somali region, it encountered various forces in Abyssinia. Because it has always been a country with a long history in East Africa, it has a greater impact on surrounding tribes, not the tribute system of China, but just influence. When these tribes were invaded by the Italian army, they naturally thought of the empire around them. Although its civil war is still going on, it is still much stronger than these tribes. In the face of these tribes' requests for help, some gave support, while others ignored their requests for help in view of Italy's strength. Point therefore, this also caused Italy to encounter several waves of resistance in succession when it occupied the greater Somali region. Some people are like Duke Alaba, who gets into trouble whenever they disagree. But in general, the Italian army held most of the advantage. Point however, there are exceptions. In Eritrea, an army of 500 people was attacked by the army of Emperor Johannes IV of Abyssinia in Adi Quera. Only 2 people escaped from the battle. Point this result shocked Major General Bart, who was in charge of command in Eritrea. On the one hand, he reported to Rome, and on the other hand, he immediately organized troops and rushed to Adikula. But when he arrived with his army, there were no Abyssinians here. Point faced with such a situation, Major General Bart could only sigh in despair, because the military gave them strict orders not to attack Abyssinia. Moreover, with the 3,000 men in his hands, he was unable to attack the East African plateau. Point as for the next steps, we need to listen to Rome's decision. Point Sudan, the Ethiopia you wanted is here. This piece counts as 2 chapters. Because of the word count, it counts as 2 chapters, justifiably. These are chapters 2 and 3, and there are still 7 chapters. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.